Tanya and Eric will be joining us in person.
No, Eric actually is not feeling well, so he's joining us online and he is here.
I do not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, it's 7:00. I call the Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 Nederland Board of Trustees meeting to order. We, Macy, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Can you take the vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Blakemore. Here. Trustee Corvalon.
Here.
Trustee Corvalon?
Here. Do you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, Tanya. It seems like they
Trustee
can't.
Corvalon, can you hear us online?
Let me text Miranda.
I think it's. Hold on, we're fixing an audio issue on our end.
Can you try it again, Tanya?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm here.
Thank you. Trustee Kuzma.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Here.
And that's everyone. Thank you.
Great. So we have a quorum. Let's go right to board at one consent agenda. It's pretty short. Does anybody have anything to say about that? I bet you don't. Okay. Okay, then we'll close out board at one. Let's go right to public comment on non-agenda items.
I need to take a vote on that one, please.
Oh, we do. That's right.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Mahol.
Yes.
Trustee Kuzma.
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon.
Yes.
And Trustee Blakemore. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Public comment on non-agenda items. Public comments limited to 3 minutes per person. Prior to avoiding comments, they must state their name and then identify if they're a general resident. And if not, then not a resident, the affiliation with the town. I only see one on here from John Allen. Is John online?
Not that I see.
Okay. Would anybody else like to make a public comment? Either, go ahead.
Chris Bray, 339 Sunrise Lane now, formerly 224 West Pine Street. I want to make note to all of you and our wonderful fire department for taking care of the fire in the camper on the way to the high school today so rapidly that our town is nice and safe, even though the camper can burn. Thank you.
Thanks for letting the snow, Chris. Okay, anybody else have anything to say? Miranda, is anybody online have their hand up?
Not that I see.
Okay, we're getting through this section pretty quick. Let's give it just a couple seconds. Let me know if anything else pops up. Okay, then we'll move right on to action items. The newly sworn in, we're going to swear in board members. They just went through a read-in on the rules of the road. You'll really enjoy open meetings law and the complications that brings. But Miranda, do you want to set the table for what we're going to do in this part of the meeting?
Yes, so at the August 23rd special election, Billy Giblin was elected to be mayor and Jesse Severs was elected to be trustee. So tonight we will be swearing them into office and Macy Caligaris, town clerk, will be issuing those oaths starting with Billy Giblin.
Camera.
Where's my list?
Yeah. Please raise your right hand. Thank you. And repeat after me. I, Billy Giblin, do solemnly affirm
I, Billy Giblin, do solemnly affirm
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland.
and that I will faithfully and to the best of my skill and ability
That I will faithfully, to the best of my skill and ability,
perform the duties of the office of mayor
perform the duties of the office of mayor
of the town of Nederland upon which I am about to enter.
of the town of Nederland, upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Which one's yours? Can we do Billy?
After we're done with Jesse Seaver, then we'll then move everyone around. Jesse?
Jesse, come on up. Yep.
You can raise your right hand and repeat after. I, Jesse Severs, do solemnly affirm
I, Jesse Severs, do solemnly affirm
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support and uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
and the ordinances of the town of Nederland,
and that I will faithfully and to the best of my skill and ability
and I will faithfully and to the best of my skill and ability
perform the duties of the office of the Board of Trustees
perform the duties of the office of the Board of Trustees
of the town of Nederland upon which I am about to enter.
of the town of Nederland upon which I am about to enter.
So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we're not at full strength board yet, but we're almost there.
So we were gonna take a few minute break while we rearrange the room.
Yep. Workplace safety. Make that chair totally wrapped on.
Just very low, it doesn't go on.
Thanks.
Go down. Yeah.
Yes. Help me not to swear, but I Welcome, Bill. Well,
Yeah.
Okay, so you got a copy of this already? Okay, so we're just gonna slide in. Yeah, 6.1. It's pretty low. But that's all we just. It's gonna take a while to start. You can have to fly off. You better run into the fly off. Yeah, I can. I put in a 1 minute delay and on my set with outlook. You know, 10,000 countries.
Yeah.
Don, that's something over, let's rock cells garage. 10 o'clock, she'll still labor. Yeah, I think he thinks that was appropriate.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Guess the first thing I want to do is say thanks and appreciate everyone's great campaign and election and forward to comes starting up. So we'll look to action item 6.2, ballot language.
Yes. So following the discussion we had on August 30th, we are bringing back ballot language in the form of resolutions for your consideration. There's a 1% sales tax increase. There is also, so that is resolution 2022-37. There is the marijuana sales tax. There are two versions of that. There's 2022-38. And then there's 2022-38A, which is where those funds are earmarked for parks and recreation. And then the last one is 2022-41, which is the occupational tax increase. Tonight, we are asking for you to vote on each of the resolutions on whether you are approving those. Tonight is the last night we have to discuss these. In addition, we are asking you for the two marijuanas that you reject, the one that you do not want to move forward, so that we have a clean record of which resolutions we will send on to Boulder County so that they have their ballot language for the November coordinated Boulder County election. Attorney Manson, am I missing anything?
One thing I think we do need to reiterate, though, we're not to campaign for it.
Correct, yes. So once you adopt ballot language, which is what you would be doing tonight, the Fair Campaign Practices Act prohibits town money from being spent on campaigning for these ballot measures. And you can campaign individually, you just can't campaign at the dais, or town can't issue any PR materials in support of these ballot measures.
Good.
I did read that there could be a list of pros and cons. Is that something? Explain that.
Yes, pros and cons statements are submitted. There's a deadline that those need to go into, would go to Boulder County so that they could be in the blue book. Pro and con statements are 500 words apiece. And you can write individually, you can write pro and con statements. You cannot spend a Board of Trustee meeting to write pro and con statements.
Those days are past.
And just a point of clarification, actually, Boulder County did ask that town staff prepare our tabor notices, and so we are actually going to end up doing those, and therefore comments can be also submitted to town staff. The tabor notices will be included in the blue book, but we will provide that support to Boulder County. Yeah, I think that's, and so I don't have the deadline on the right in front of me, but what we'll do is we'll publicly notice that there are typical media channels to make sure that it gets out there that people can submit those for and against statements.
And one thing while we're talking on this, what you can do is, as a Board of Trustees, you can adopt a resolution in favor of a ballot issue. So you can adopt a resolution on ballot issues that are town ballot issues. You can adopt a resolution in favor of Boulder County or the Fire Protection District ballot issues. But those resolutions then could only be used in a way that you use any other resolution. So maybe publishing them on your website, and that's about it.
Just to be clear, Attorney Madsen, Did you say that we could, the BOT could adopt a resolution in favor of one of these tax increase measures?
Correct.
Thank you.
So can we go to, you want to go point by tax on this? It makes sense to me to talk about each.
That would be our recommendation, yes, to handle them one at a time.
And I like the aims. Is this something that you want to introduce initially, or would just this tax?
Yeah, I mean, we can, if there's a desire of the board, we can reintroduce these. We did not carry over former AIM information because I know we've talked about it a few months. I do recognize we have 2 board of trustee members. So if there's a desire for us to do that recap, we absolutely are happy to do so.
Hey, this is Tanya. I'm having a hard time hearing everyone but you, Miranda. Just FYI.
Thanks. Is this any better?
Yeah, it's better for sure. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Well, I think we've all read through it. First, I'm Jesse. Do you want to, for new, is that something you want to have introduced by Miranda or Jennifer? Or?
No.
So, going to the first one we're on is a resolution regarding the sales tax, and see the wording of, can I read this out loud so people in the audience can hear it, or that's the one I don't understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, you definitely can.
So now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Town of Nederland, Colorado. The Board of Trustees hereby refers and approves the following ballot issue for submission to the voters to appeal on the ballot for the election to be held on November 8th, 2022. So we're deciding if we're gonna this or not. Shall Town of Nederland tax be increased $625,000 annually, first full fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023, by such amounts as are raised annually thereafter, by the imposition of an additional 1% sales tax, such that the Town of Nederland sales tax rate increases from 4% to 5%. The revenues from such tax increase being used for law enforcement services, personnel to support public safety, equipment facilities to support public safety, personnel to support other town services, and/or other lawful municipal purposes, and shall all revenues derived from such tax and any earnings thereon be collected, retained, and spent as a voter-approved revenue change under Article and Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, notwithstanding any revenue or expenditure limitations contained in the Colorado Constitution or any law. The choice is a yes or no. Is there any questions or comments from trustees?
I'd like to hear public comment first.
Okay, we could move to public comments, and if no one has a question. Open up for public comment. Anyone either here in the room or online, 3 minutes. Set the time for 3 minutes.
And Mayor Giblin, you're gonna call for public comment after each resolution or each tax.
Each of these texts.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, let's do it because they're all pretty. No one in the room. Anyone online? Any?
No.
Okay, so this one is pretty detailed. So if no one else has a comment, I'll go ahead and close.
No, this is Tanya. I want to have a comment.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'll close the public comment.
Oh, I got you.
Bring it back to the trustees.
So, I was thinking during the voting process that I would put out a resolution to amend it to 0.7% instead of 1% to raise about 5,500 annually instead of the 1%. Mainly because I'm feeling a little pessimistic about it. And I think this might help with all the other tax increases on the ballot from different departments.
Can I offer a point of clarification too? So the language that's in the resolution is really dictated by the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, TABOR. And so part of that is the 625,000. And then what Trustee Corvalon mentioned, if you changed it to 0.7%, 437,000, that is above expected revenues. Because what we're saying is to voters is this is more than we think likely that we'll get. It's a good estimate. But if the town recovers any or takes in any revenue above 625,000, for example, that money needs to then be refunded back to the voters. So that's a high estimate. All of these are high estimates as to what the revenue collected would be.
Okay, so the statutory amount that's in there, the 625 now, anything above that, if we collected it, automatically gets sent back.
Right, and so in writing these, we write them in such a way that it's reasonable, but it is a high estimate.
Okay.
Because we don't want to have the town have to refund that money.
Understood. Okay. So the two aren't necessarily correlated. The 1% and the,
No, the 1% and the 625 are correlated,
okay.
but this 625 is a higher estimate as to what the expected revenues would be.
Okay. So Tanya, your main reasoning, if I can ask, is do you think that the 1% is a bridge too far and 0.7 is going to make it? Might be muted.
What was your question, Tom?
Tell me your rationale on 0.7 versus.
Oh, the
1.
rationale is because there's a lot of 0.1 increases on different issues. The fire department, the bus, I think we're not the only things asking for money in November. And I just thought that maybe it would soften the blow a little if it's a little less. I
Okay.
don't know. That's just my thinking. I'm a little worried it's not going to pass. And so I was like, well, maybe, and that's just my psychology. So it's kind of lower it a little in hopes that it will be more appetizing. But I'm willing to go with 1% as well if everybody says no to that. I'm just saying, I'm just thinking of that just because of all the other issues on the ballots.
Got it. Does anybody else on the board talk with business owners, either brick and mortar or home-based businesses, or do we have any basis to make a judgment on whether this is going to pass or not, or what the right amount is?
I have a lot to say about it, details it's there. So the 1%, our estimate of the revenue was 500,000 from, the August 2nd aim, so 625, add a buffer there so that we'll be able to retrieve all of the revenue from that 1% of sales tax. I just wanted to say it was 500,000. So we recently received 5 emails from business owners. One was in favor if the money was going to the police department. And this was related to a 1% sales tax increase. One was in favor when was concerned about the town image. This will then make us the highest sales tax in Boulder County if we do decrease it by 1%. 3 were against. One because loss of sales. Another because we currently have high inflation, a possible recession, increased interest rates from the feds. And another was against it because the tourists are already complaining about our 8.985% current sales tax. I've also heard from a business owner that they feel there will be competition with online sales, in particular Amazon for high price items. And the 1% will be a deal breaker for the customers. Breweries currently include tax as a part of their product price. So for example, a beer may cost $5, the tax is rolled into that. Same for their snacks. And they will not be recovering that increase of 1% sales tax. So they will actually, their revenue will be reduced by 1% because they round up their products to a whole dollar. Instead of charging the tax as part of the product price, instead of adding on to the price of the product. I went back and looked at the survey that we sent to businesses and was in the packet, BOT packet for the first meeting in August. There were 46 respondents. Out of those, 8% were in favor of the 1% sales tax. Or, I'm sorry, 17% were in favor of the 1% sales tax. That was 8 out of 46. 37% were in favor of a 0.5% increase in sales tax. That's 17 out of 46. Where we get to the majority is on 0.25%. In that case, 56 of the respondents, 26 out of 46, were in favor of a 0.25% increase. A 0.25% increase would be $125,000 a year. And so I will, can we come back around to me later? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Eric, you thinking out there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, folks. I'm in a bad way, so I'm not going to be too talkative tonight. But I do think that I'm coming around more and more to be against this proposal entirely, the sales tax increase in particular. I don't think we have clarity on how exactly the revenue is going to be spent. It's unfortunate that this is coming before the discussion item that it directly relates to. And I think that that's a tad problematic because it assumes that we're going to have a certain set of financial obligations to spend this money on that we may not have. At this stage, to me, it feels too early to put this on a ballot.
Thanks, Eric. Jesse?
Yeah, thanks, Billy. One question I have is, let's say, for the sake of argument, that the economy in Nederland continues to grow and we can project that we're going to surpass these high estimations. What do we do in that case if we do want to continue to recoup that revenue? Do we need to have a new resolution at that point, do a new ballot, or how does that get adjusted?
It's only the first year that the town collects the revenue. So, for example, with this 1% sales tax increase, as Trustee Blakemore mentioned, the projected revenue from that is $500,000. And so to say then in your ballot language that you're going to get the increase will be 625,000. You'd have to go over 625,000 to refund it next year, which is, I worked with Rita, the town treasurer, and she agrees that that is not likely.
So it's just the first year after that?
Yes.
That it's. So,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So other than that, I would say that, I'm influenced by the stats that Karen brought forth. Also the argument that Eric has made. And I'm new to the BOT. I've been doing my best to pay attention to the discussion leading up to this point on this particular issue. And my impression of how this has come about was really in response to raising capital, raising funds for the police department and for the increasing demand and need for the police department. I'm aware that, you know, Miranda, you are asking for raises and additional revenue for the town is definitely a good thing. You know, I'm motivated to find that revenue for the town and to do whatever I can to help think creatively and think about how we can achieve the revenue goals. I really want to, with all that said, I am also very much in favor of putting things to the voters. And you know, I'm not aware of what the costs are to put a ballot initiative like this together to us as a town. However, I think that more opportunities to vote and chime in as a voting public, the better. And I'm inclined to poll the public with a ballot initiative. And I think that Karen's, you know, stats there about the 0.25 is certainly a modest increase. It is some additional revenue, and I'd be open to considering that at this point.
What?
Tom, is there more you want to?
No?
This is Tanya. I want to say I concur with Jesse. There's no harm in putting it on the ballot, and no real cost to us, I don't think either. And if the voters say no, well, then we know that they think we have enough money, and all the projects and stuff that people are constantly writing about. Why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? I mean, the answer is it's not in the budget, most likely. And then you got to apply for grants and this and that. And so start a committee and get whatever you want done. And that's always been our answer. And that will be just the way we'll continue. And then if voters say, yeah, then we'll find out that we have some more money to actually start doing some fun, creative things for the town and pay employees better wages to maintain staff. And like Jesse said, I don't think there's any harm in putting it on the ballot and see what the public actually thinks, what they want.
This is Eric. I generally agree with that sentiment. The only reservation that I have is that the way that the ballot language is written really strongly suggests that you spend it in a particular way. And I'm not convinced anymore that that's how the money is best spent. And so that to me feels a little bit like a bait and switch to put this kind of ballot language on the ballot when I'm not sure that it's actually how things are going to turn out next year.
Can we change the function of it? So less emphasis on policing and more on town projects and town staff?
One thing to think about as we decide what to do here, we haven't talked about it yet, but we just got the bill for extra sheriff's coverage retroactively, and it was $40,000, Miranda.
It was $30,000 for May through August, and that was not daily coverage. That was primarily the weekends. But between all 4 months, it was just around 30,000.
So carrying that forward.
Correct. So if we're not looking at daily coverage, you're still going to be looking at pretty substantial numbers. So I'm glad we got the invoice because it's going to impact us bringing back the supplemental budget on September 20th. We're going to have to increase from 58,000 when we can dive into that invoice. I'm going to do that with Rita tomorrow. But we're going to be looking at much more funding under the supplemental to cover Boulder County Sheriff extra duty.
Yeah, so my thoughts is, I think it's in alignment or only 15 degrees crosswise with anybody, is that we put it on the ballot at 1%. We see what happens. We know we've got a hole in the ground to make up from the middle part of the year that's going to extend into the later part of the year. So why would we disagree?
So, okay, so what I wanted to say is I looked, previously I looked at the staff salary increase for 2023 and beyond. And that is 52,000 per year, which is the difference between the yearly cost if we prorated the 3 months that we have for the supplemental budget to a full year, less the 112,000 under budgeted that we've said under budgeted the sales tax. So moving forward for that increase is 52,000, and so that is well taken care of by a 0.25% sales tax increase, plus extra for the police department, and to continue to ensure that our staff is paid a living wage that is competitive in the area so that we retain our staff. As far as the whole, I believe that that will be taken care of by our decrease in police staff for the year on out, because we did budget for maybe 4 plus 1, something like that. So I am in favor of the 0.25% sales tax on the ballot. I think our town has a really small budget. You know, we have about 2 million in non-grant revenue, and that currently goes totally to for ongoing operations, day-to-day operations expenses. And so I think that we do need to go to the voters, asking them for a much smaller sales tax increase, and I think that we will be more likely to get it on 0.25 than a 1%.
Question on process, Billy. Are we going to vote on this all together, or are we going to go one at a time, or what are we going to do?
I think it'd be wise to go one at a time. I have a feeling they're so different, and there's so many moving parts that I think one individual. The voters will vote on them individually and socially.
I think we should discuss them all and then vote individually.
Okay.
That sounds like a good plan. Yeah. Because there's definitely crossover here. I guess thanks for all the comments and information. I appreciate your staffs.
This is Tanya. I have a question. Later on in this meeting, we have, and it probably should have been opposite, but I guess we can't, discussion about the police department, and, you know, some of us are just ready for Boulder County Sheriff, and there has been talk of still continuing with the marshal search. And so it seems like some of us are saying, well, there's no point in putting this on the ballot. We're going to go with Boulder County Sheriff. We're going to save a bunch of money, and we don't need it. But it isn't really 100% determined at this moment. Is it?
I would say it's not.
It's not.
Law enforcement, whoever's doing the law enforcement.
That's at the end of our meeting. We'll talk more.
Give it to us for free.
So if it's not on the ballot, you can pretty much guarantee that we can't afford, and we'll just go with Boulder County Sheriff. So Karen's suggesting an amendment to 0.25%. I'm suggesting 0.7. I guess we're now going to go around and vote at some point, right?
So Tanya, I don't think that saying 0.25% means that we're not going to have a local police department. You know, I've looked at I've done a little bit of research on what other small communities are paying for their police department. And I think we could go with what we have been plus additional for the salary increases that we've already put out in the, for the.
Karen, how much does 0.25% give? How
100
much?
125,000.
And that's the high estimate that we're working on?
No, that's
Because
that is the estimate given our current sales.
So Jennifer Matson would have to address that as to what would be the proper amount, because I think we're high estimating by a percentage. I'm not sure what that percentage is. So you think 125 would be enough for everybody's increase, not just the police?
The highest will be 156,200.
Okay.
It's 1.25 times.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm ready to vote whenever you guys are.
I'd like to just make one quick comment. So appreciate the stats, and I think putting it out there for people to decide, I agree. I think we need, this definitely came to be because of the situation with the police department, and nonetheless, we have to pay for law enforcement. We haven't decided how that will go, but we need to pay for it. It's interesting here, if there's a backing by the local retailers, majority for 25%, it seems like a number that has been vetted by the retailers, I'm sorry, 0.25% thinking. Then now it goes in front of the voters. One thing I want to say, and Jennifer, make sure I'm not like doing campaigning here, but clarification I needed to get today is that this does not include groceries. So for sake of people who are financially, struggling, whatever folks, where this is going to hit the food budget, this won't affect groceries as no sales taxes do.
Correct, it does not. Sales tax isn't charged on food that you buy in the grocery store. It is charged on prepared food that you would buy at a restaurant or that type of thing.
Prepared food, and then maybe other things you might buy at the store that are
Correct.
food items.
Yes.
Like school supplies. Oh, yeah, I guess ultimately, I think putting it in front of the folks, putting it in front of all of us as voters, and putting something in front of everyone that has a chance of passing, and we're going to be flooded with, I think, 7 different taxes potentially this November, 3 or 4 from the county, 1 from the fire district, and up to 3 from the town. So people are going to get taxed very fast. But nonetheless, I think if we want the police department and good law enforcement safety, we decide if we're going to pay for it.
Question, this is to you, Miranda. What have we got in reserves if we're wrong on, how much cash do we have in reserve accounts?
I don't have those financials on me. I have to find them from Rita.
Okay,
So I cannot answer at this very moment.
yeah, even ballpark? Okay, please do. I'd like to know that because, I need to know if we make the wrong bet, what shape are we in? Okay, that's all I have.
Fortunately, my mic didn't. So we've talked through, I think, for now, the sales tax, and we'll move on. Thanks, Tom, to the marijuana tax, because I agree with what Karen said, that we talked through them all, and we vote on them. So on the marijuana tax, well, I get my power sorted out. First of all, does anyone have, any trustees have a clarifying questions or anything right now? So we have 2 options on the marijuana. Since otherwise, I'd like to open up for public comment.
We got their hand raised, Miranda.
Not that I see.
Buddy, better clarify for people who are in the room if they want to talk, Billy, on what they are, or what's the
Okay.
with and what's the without,
Okay,
the A and the B.
so what we're discussing here is the marijuana sales tax. I apologize, I don't have the words in front of me because my computer's down, but we have 2 versions of the marijuana sales tax, and it would be 5% tax that would go on the ballot say we're putting it on the ballot, we're not saying it will be a tax, we're just putting it on the ballot, to be a 5% sales tax on retail marijuana. I want to clarify that it's not medical marijuana, that's for recreational marijuana, not medical. So the 5% sales tax is consistent, as the reason, some of the research y'all have done shows with places, with towns around us, municipalities around us, very few are charging nothing. 20% tax, or the total is 20. There's a certain amount of money the state's charging. There's a certain amount of tax that's pretty standard across the board. And what's been proposed is a tax, marijuana tax that would go specifically to town, which many towns and cities do. One 5% tax specified, it's just open. It's open to the general account. I mean, it's, well, I won't go into my logic yet, but one is open to general spending for the municipal expenditures, and the other one is at least initially earmarked for parks and parks and recreation purposes, with also, other legal municipal expenses. So one earmarks something and one doesn't. They're both the same.
Can I clarify, it's 38A, that is the earmarking resolution, and 38 without an A, just 38, has no earmarking. Money is for municipal purposes.
Thanks. And I'm going to read it. So again, we want to, those of you who were here last week, we want to thank Eric. Can't remember his last name. He's on the SAB. Helped us with some legal wording, but make sure these are written in the way that they will hold up. The shall town of Nederland taxes be increased $160,000 annually the first full fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023, and be by such amounts as are raised annually thereafter by the imposition of a 1% special sales tax on the sale of retail marijuana and retail marijuana products to consumers, retail marijuana stores, or retail marijuana product manufacturers, as such is authorized by state law to be in addition to the Netherlands sales tax, with proceeds to be used for parks and recreation programs and services and or other lawful municipal purposes. And shall all revenues derived from such a tax and the earnings thereof be collected, retained, and spent as a voter-approved revenue change under Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, notwithstanding any revenue or expenditure limitations contained in the Colorado Constitution or any other law. Yes or no? So that being 38A calls out Parks and Rec.
Do you say 1% or 5%?
If I said 1%, I sure should have said 5%. That's what it reads. And really 38 is all of that, but no mention of the Parks and Rec. So really it says, and shall all revenues derived from such, it doesn't call out Parks and Rec. It's not earmarked, so it's put really into the general fund. So any public comment?
Question before we do, sounds to me like, if we use the one that spells out Parks and Rec, the other lawful is one big get out of jail card. It doesn't restrict us very much.
That's correct.
So it can go into the general fund if we don't use it all for Parks and Rec.
Right. Yes, and so your occupation tax that you have, that's also one of the questions before you tonight. That is only earmarked for Health and Human Services and law enforcement. Without that, other lawful municipal purposes.
Okay.
And that's how the original one was written. When we went to the voters a couple of years ago. So it makes sense to keep it that way.
Are you talking about the occupation?
Correct.
Okay. So the sales tax and the marijuana taxes can go to the other lawful, they can either go to something they're earmarked for, the law enforcement, sales tax, from the rec is written for the marijuana tax, and then other lawful municipal expenses.
Yes.
The occupation tax is already been established as for.
Yeah, I mean, you can make changes to that because you're asking the voters for approval. So if you want to change the earmarking for the occupation tax on short-term rentals, you can change it. The language, though, is the same as what was adopted, I think it was 2019. What was approved by the voters in 2019 for the $2 per night per occupied bedroom.
So let's stay with the marijuana taxes for now, then we'll go on to occupancy.
I wonder if the people on phones know how to dial it.
Yeah, if you're on the phone, you'll press *6 to unmute. There's only one column user that uses it for you because of background noise. So *6 to.
Give you a little time in case you're doing that. Okay, on the marijuana tax, both 38 day, both versions. Go ahead, close public comment, and we'll open it up to discussion.
This is Eric. I'm in favor of 38A. I think Parks and Recreation is a woefully underfunded and underappreciated component of what town does. I think that we've absorbed Ned Rink and the tennis courts, and we have a new Parks Department that needs a budget to be effective. And I think that marijuana sales tax is a very appropriate place to direct funds to parks. So I would be in favor of 38A.
Karen, you did some research there too, right?
So we received a letter from Stacy Johnson, who's the owner of the Harvest House in Nederland, and he makes a really strong case for it being the wrong time to levy a tax on retail marijuana. The market there's a correction going on in the market, a sustained downturn, and he has a link to an article from the Colorado Sun that kind of describes the industry and what's happening to it. The reason for this sustained downturn that they believe will stay on the downward slope before it levels off is that more states have legalized marijuana. So like the folks who live in Texas that used to come to Colorado to buy, to New Mexico, there's more home growers of marijuana. And the wholesale prices are going way, way down because wholesalers are trying to make some money. So there's a very noticeable correction going on right now. The retail sales are down like 25%. You can see that in the Colorado Sun article over last year. Stacy had after he was one of the original marijuana businesses in Nederland. He opened his dispensary in 2010, and then he opened one in I'm forgetting the name of the Colorado town right now.
Crested Butte.
Thank you, Crested Butte. He's had to close that because of business. Just because the market has turned down, his revenue is a lot less than it was. Currently, our marijuana sales tax is 19.985%. People can go to unincorporated Boulder County and buy the same products for a sales tax of 15.985%. If we were to add 5% tax on top of that, it would be 25% compared to the 16% in Boulder County. And people do shop around, you know, just like we have residents here who go down to King Supers to buy groceries. People do shop for marijuana. I'm not a marijuana user, but I do support our marijuana businesses just as I do the other businesses in town. And I'd hate to see one of our long-term local establishments go out of business. So I think it's the wrong time to be levying a marijuana tax. If we do a sales tax, they'll be paying the sales tax as well as all the other businesses.
Hey Karen, this is Tanya. Do you know which unincorporated Boulder County communities have dispensaries?
Yeah, I can, if you Google lowest price marijuana Boulder County, you'll find one of them. So just, that place is just outside of North Boulder. So I can.
Well, I mean, if people really want to shop around, they're going to get their medical card and they're going to get it for no taxes and at really good deals. So I'm just saying that if you think a tourist per se is going to drive to North Boulder for 5 point whatever, how much difference?
Well, right now it's
No
about
sales tax, so 5%, is that the difference?
5% right now. If we increase the marijuana tax by 5%, it would be 10%.
Did you hear from Igati? Did you hear from Silver Stem?
I reached out to the other 3 marijuana retail shops in town, but I did not hear back from them.
I talked with the Agati owner. Of course, he wasn't thrilled. Nobody is when their business is being singled out for taxation. But yeah, just looking at this Colorado Sun piece, it's the contraction is pretty astounding. We peaked at 2.2 billion, and it's been sliding down for over a year, and there's a lot of closures. So we called it a no-brainer. It's there is nothing is necessarily a no-brainer, but that's I know that these guys are in. I wouldn't say they're in distress, but the bloom is off the rose, so to speak.
Well, this is Eric. I agree that this is not the right time, but in the opposite way, I think this should have been done a long time ago. One of the big benefits that legalizing marijuana was supposed to have was giving the ability for local municipalities to level up to 10% additional sales tax. Netherlands levies 0 of that 10%, and almost every single town in our general vicinity around us and other mountain towns that are similar in size levy part of that sales tax, many of them higher than that 5%. And so I remain unconvinced that Netherlands should not be benefiting from this particular industry in the way that it was designed when it was legalized in the first place.
Good. Okay.
Oh, this is Tanya. I also want to say I agree with Eric about earmarking it for Parks and Recs because most of the big projects we want to do involve Parks and Rec.
Thanks.
I'm compelled by Eric's arguments and I'm aligned there and based on, integrating some of Karen's input, I'd be open to coming down slightly from the 5%, but I do feel that we should offer it up to the voters to weigh in and see if they would like to, levy a tax there. And I'm in favor of earmarking it for Parks and Rec.
How much does this one raise total?
Jennifer, that's 160,000 or something like that.
Right, it's 160,000, so I believe it was 130, is what we had estimated on those previous aims.
Okay, so we just put in the buffer.
Yes,
Okay,
Is that buffer through Tabor that you're putting on this, the 1.25%? Is that just a buffer or is that kind of an equation that goes through Tabor?
there's no equation. You know, if we were to say if the estimated revenues would be 130 and we were to say, well, there's a lot of different things to think about. One is, what are voters going to approve? So if we say that, you know, we overestimate moonshot and say we're going to collect $1 million revenue when we only think we're going to collect 130, voters are not likely going to approve it. And then the other issue is, does that meet the spirit of Tabor? Not likely.
Yeah.
So there isn't a formula that's in place for putting that estimate in the ballot language. You know, it's amount over, and like I said, I did consult with Rita on these estimates.
Okay, that was just me wondering because I said, you know, the 1% for sales tax is 500,000, so 625 was the cap. You said marijuana, 130,000.
And, well, I
Similar.
got the number right here.
So,
From the aim, 116,666 at 5% for retail marijuana.
okay, 116.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a couple, I mean, Stacy's kind of making interesting points in a couple directions over the last couple weeks, having heard, you know, he was the first one who, the only one who replied when, or that Karen got to speak with when she was talking about this as a police, you know, I think this all came up really based on our situation with the police department. And marijuana tax, whether we should put it out there years ago or not, we didn't. So we're doing it now, and it's really in response to the police department. And he had said, I remember I think we could go whatever he said, give us a choice of police department or the tax, he chooses the police department.
So that was the manager.
Ah,
I think his name was
Okay, I thought it was police.
not
Was-
Stacy. Stacy didn't make that comment.
Oh, okay, I apologize. And then, but Stacy brings it up, so, I mean, it's interesting because he's the only non-corporate store in town. Most vulnerable, now, so. Again, if we put anything on the ballot, the voters will decide. I guess that kind of changes it. It wasn't Stacy who was choosing the police department over, then I guess lots of departments need it. Just for any earmark it, we're shifting.
Yeah, if we don't earmark it, then we have more flexibility. We could decide each year what the priorities are and then direct funds appropriate, like the parks space, or it might be.
But of course, we can do that anyway with. the way
Yeah,
that
there's an and/or clause on there.
It doesn't change anything, really.
Good
It
point.
merely sets out our intentions, and I think that, you know, I personally be willing to follow through on those intentions and hopefully have a better funded parks department, and that would help support all of our employees.
Okay, thanks. That sounds good. Any other comments on the marijuana taxes? And it sounds like of the 238A seems to be the one that leaning towards, so it is earmarked, but has flexibility. So next, we're talking about an ordinance tax. Thanks again, Tom, for occupation tax. I don't like you comment. Computer killer. Kill the computer.
oh, well.
The ordinance tax is really just about raising the short-term rental tax from $2 a night, $4 a night. If I have that correctly, and there's a dollar amount that goes with it.
Yeah, and I want to clarify that currently it's being charged at $2 per night per room occupied, and the amendment is $4 per night per room. So regardless if it's occupied or not, So if you have a 5-bedroom home, you'll be charged $4 per room, even if only one room is occupied.
Oh, okay. I definitely didn't understand.
And it's entirely self-reported, right?
Correct. Occupational tax is self-reported.
Doesn't, the service that we're using, host compliance, do they not report how many rooms were rented out?
No, they don't have access to that kind of data. The type of data we can acquire from host compliance is the number of rented days. But we wouldn't know how many rooms were occupied because we don't have a guess or only the renter would know that information if that was something they asked about when they were doing a short-term rental booking. But that's data we cannot acquire.
So, but did we cross-reference the sites that are rented versus the occupation tax that's collected? So,
Correct. We're able to assess what the minimum amount paid should be.
oh, but if we don't say occupied rooms, then we'll know exactly, correct?
Correct, because right now, if you have a 5-bedroom home, we don't know if you're occupying one room or all 5. So we're able to operate it on a minimum. We know minimum how much you should give us, where if you take away the per occupied room, we would know then that you would have a 5-bedroom home, you'd pay us $20 a night, no matter what, and then however many days rented.
And we have taken that out of the work, correct?
Yeah.
And that was at the request of trustee Corvalon, when we brought this forward. I think we brought this forward on the 30th, August 30th.
Yeah, I looked at our 2022 budget to see what we're expecting to bring in from this tax. And it's $10,000. And that's what we brought in 2021. So just to let folks know, I think it's considerably lower than the 45,000.
So I'm glad we're sitting there.
Comments, Billy, if you don't mind. I have an Airbnb, so I'd like to explore this conflict of interest concept quickly and see if this is one of those times when I can step out of the room.
Well, so this is an issue of general application to the town. And by voting on this resolution, you're not voting to approve the tax itself. And because it doesn't apply specifically to your Airbnb. So it's really a question as to whether you can separate your interest as a Airbnb owner and your role for the Board of Trustees. If you can do that, then you don't have a conflict of interest. If you can't do that, then you do.
Okay, I feel that I can keep that separate. So I have to stay here.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm just looking at the budget again, and 2022 budget is 10,000 occupation tax revenue. 2021 actual was 26,000.
Thanks for those. I'd like to go ahead and read it real quick because we didn't get public comment and just want to get more specific on it. Let me here. Shall town of Nederland taxes be increased $45,000 annually in the first full fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023, and by such amounts as are rated annually thereafter by an increase the occupation tax paid by every person or business that furnishes short-term lodging less than 30 consecutive days to the amount of $4 per day from the current $2 per day per bedroom or per other accommodation without defined bedrooms. Proceeds to be used for health and human service programs and activities and law enforcement services. And shall all revenues derived from such occupation tax and any earnings thereon be collected and spent as a voter-approved revenue change, notwithstanding any revenue or expenditure limitations contained in Article 5 and Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution or any other law. Options are yes or no. Are there any public comments on the occupation tax? Short-term rentals? Go ahead. Come on to the podium and you got 3 minutes. Oh, please say your name.
Kim Govo, resident of town of Nederland. So I agree with some of the sentiments that have already been shared, but maybe these are good intentions, but I agree that it's bad timing. I also want to just state before I start that some of this applies to the previous conversations about proposed sales tax increase in marijuana sales. First and foremost, I oppose increasing any taxes during a recession, which is basically what we're in. And if you don't agree, then you live under a rock. Price of basic goods are up. The price of gasoline is up. The cost of electricity and natural gas has more than doubled. Would I prefer to have a local police department? Sure. Do I believe some of the town staff deserve a raise? Absolutely. Do I want it more than providing for my family and paying bills? Absolutely not. It is clear that the local will cost substantially more in terms of a police department. These proposals are at best heartless. At worst, they will likely contribute to the demise of our tourism as we head into our slower season. Some businesses barely survive. Do we really want the town, do we want more of them to close? I would say no. In the terms of short-term rentals, we are already being taxed over 13% between the sales tax and occupation tax. As written, it just looks like $2 more, just like you said, Mayor. In reality, you are not being transparent as the ballot is written because we're already paying sales tax. You're proposing more sales tax, already paying occupation tax. You're proposing more occupation tax. And why in the world would we be paying taxes on rooms that aren't even being occupied? If the sales and occupancy taxes are approved, it would go from nearly 7% to nearly 11%. Currently, Nederland collects 7% tax, which is more than the state, county, RTD, library, museum taxes combined. This would increase the total taxes from over 13% to over 16% for STR owners. And that doesn't include other increased proposed taxes on the ballot. And the town hasn't even spent the tabor tax as far
I
as.
haven't told him yet because I thought we were getting wood from John and Luann.
Pardon? What?
That's just an interruption. Keep going.
Keep going. The
Okay.
case is done.
And also, do we really want to bite the tourism hand that feeds our town? I would say no. Okay, and then the wording on the ballot, just want to go back to that. It doesn't provide the complete context. It makes it seem like no big deal. Raise 1%, raise 2.25% or $2 a night. But what the majority of voters do not understand is that the current amount that we property owners are already paying, it's just simple as written. Have we also considered that that many of the STR owners are full-time residents? It just seems like they're villainized and it's like, oh, tax the tourists, tax the tourists. We're not gonna have any tourists. We keep taxing them as they come in and as they go. And just so we are aware that tourists who stay here in town spend more money in town. And now you're taxing them even more. And I'm not even talking about STR tax that they have to pay for VRBO and Airbnb. Anyway, in closing, I just want to say, like, we're in a recession. It's absolutely heartless, and none of this is being taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
So I did have to mute some call-in users, so star 6 if those individuals want to let me.
Anyone else in the room? Comments on this or the other taxes? Okay, then we'll close public comment on the occupation tax and we'll back to the trustees. So we already did talk about this, most of us have knows.
So I did a low sanity check, going from $2 per $4 per room. So I calculated the tax of a few different Airbnbs in Nederland and compare that to other towns and cities in Boulder County that are charging 8% because they're home rule. And I do think it's comparable. So I think that the $4 per night per room is fair compared with other municipalities in Florida.
Thanks, Karen. Tanya, do you have anything you want to say? Any comments?
Not really. I mean, we got a 3-bedroom house down the street from me that rents for $500 a night. So I really don't think those people are gonna be too worried about an extra $12 on their $500 a night rental. So that's kind of where I stand.
Eric? Thanks, Tanya. Eric?
No, I'm generally in favor of putting this one to the voters.
Jesse? Sir?
I feel that asking the voters to weigh in on a tax is an ask to begin with, and we should be focused on the ones that have the most bang for the buck, and I feel like this one is the least of those on that criteria. So I'm less inclined to support this one. I do believe that we should be strategic about leveraging one of our greatest strengths, which is the tourism, and which is the attractiveness of our mountain community to people to come here and visit and stay here at Airbnb. And I'm definitely in favor of thinking strategically and finding ways to tax tourists, and even as that applies to Airbnb lodging. I know that the amount that we pay is I feel like is a very low amount in our tax, and I would be more than happy to pay more as a Airbnb owner. However, again, I go back to my initial statement where I don't feel that this one has the most bang for the buck in terms of just the political capital that we're needing to overcome to ask the voters to weigh in on a tax increase. I think we should focus on the sales tax increase or the marijuana tax increase myself.
Thanks, Jesse. What do you?
I think we covered what we need to cover. I think there are more questions. It's time to decide what we want to do.
Okay, yeah.
Mayor Giblin, I just wanted to answer Mayor Pro Tem Holt's reserves question, if that's okay. So Rita Six had sent me a message that of January 2022 financials, the general fund balance is about 1.6 million, and of that 150,000 is restricted, so it's leaving us about 1.4.
1.4, including the restricted funds.
That's not including restricted. Including restricted is 1.6.
Okay, feel better. Thanks. Thank you, Rita, wherever you are.
Right. Rita's also sick.
Okay.
Thanks everyone for your comments. I guess, or I think what we need to do now is just go back to the start and go through motions and seconds and decide what we'll put on the ballot. So going back to the sales tax, which was the first one, resolution 2022-37. Sales tax increase. If there is particular scripting for how I have to do this, I need to.
Someone just needs to make a motion.
Karen knows how to do it.
Okay, I'll move to approve resolution 2022-37 with an amendment. And the amendment is to change the 1% sales tax to 2%. Do you want me to read the whole thing, replacing 1% with 2%?
No, you don't need to do that. And so just for clarity, that would change the increased tax to 156 250, 0.25.
Yes, I move to do that.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Nothing else?
Trustee Lakeborn? Yes. Trustee Severs?
Yes.
Trustee Ismail?
No.
Mayor Giblin?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahmoud?
Yes.
And Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. And to move it to the next, I think we've agreed we're gonna talk or vote on resolution 2022-38A, marijuana sales tax.
I move to approve resolution 2022-38A.
I will second that. This is Tanya.
We have this discussion? Okay. So so I'd like to see it be less than 5%. Because we've heard from we listened to the businesses in town that were not marijuana retailers, and I think we should listen to the marijuana retailers as well as consider what's happening in the market there. Do I propose something, an amendment?
You can do a motion to amend, a motion to approve resolution 38A.
I'd like to make a motion to amend to approve resolution 38A to reduce the tax amount from 5% to 2.5%.
Trustee Coombs Ismail has to accept that amendment, correct, Attorney Madsen?
No, then there's a vote by the Board of Trustees. That's not a friendly amendment. It's an amendment. It's a motion to amend. So then there's has to be a second and then a vote.
I second. So if we approve the amendment, then we vote on the amended version.
Yes,
So we're gonna vote twice on this one.
yes.
So, amendment,
I'm confused because Eric had a motion on the table. Did he take it away?
No, it's been motion to amend, so we just vote on that now.
Right.
We
So
vote.
the motion on the table now is a motion to amend resolution 2022-38A to reduce the tax percentage from 5% to 2.5%. And so then, do we have a second on that?
I said.
And so trustee Seaver second, so now you all vote.
And so if somebody wanted it still at 5, they would just vote no here, or,
Yes.
okay.
so Macy, can you? roll call?
Trustee Coombs Ismail?
No.
Trustee Lakeborn? Yes. Trustee Severs?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahmoud?
No.
Trustee Corvalon?
No.
And Mayor Giblin?
Yes.
Yes, we have a tie.
We're debating.
Let me just look at the Board of Trustees rules of procedures. So I think the tie is approval. But I'm checking. Okay, so in the Board of Trustee rules and procedures, in case of a tie vote on any motion, the motion shall be considered defeated. So now then the motion before you is a motion to approve 2022-38A at the 5%.
Without amendments.
Correct.
Okay.
We still need a second, I think.
No, you had a second.
Trustee Garland seconded.
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
trustee Blakemore. No. Trustee Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Giblin,
No,
trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Moblin.
Yes.
Thank you. So the motion passes.
sorry about that. The motion passes,
And we would select,
which means will go on the ballot.
we would select you to vote on resolution 2022-38, but to reject that for the sake of the record.
I move to reject resolution 2022-38.
I'll second that.
Mayor Giblin,
Yes.
trustee Gonzalez,
Yes.
trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moblin,
Yes.
trustee Blakemore. Yes. And trustee Severs.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, the third tax that we're going to discuss whether or not to put on the ballot is the occupation tax. Going from 2% for room occupied to, if I understand correctly, not 2%, I'm sorry, $2 per night per room occupied, $4 per night of the day, for all available rooms. Much more than a $2 difference, $2 times all the available accommodations. So, someone going to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move to approve resolution 2022-41, submitting a ballot issue authorizing the town to increase the occupation tax on short-term lodging to a maximum of $4 per day per bedroom, and setting the ballot title for the ballot issue.
Second.
Mayor Giblin,
Yes.
trustee Severs,
No.
trustee Blakemore. Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Moblin,
No.
trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and trustee Gonzalez.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So we've decided which ballots will and which won't go on the ballot in November. I think maybe a short break.
Could I make one quick statement and then I don't know if we're taking a quick break?
Yes, please.
Just wanted to respond to Kim's public comment. You know, I really appreciate the words she shared, and I want to just tell the public in general to please participate in democracy. I feel that the BOT really responded to a call for additional revenue based on a crisis that it was experiencing. And it got together and came up with some ideas for raising revenue for meeting the financial crisis it was experiencing. And at this point, because we have put these initiatives to the voting public, it is out of our hands, really. And we've said, hey, this is a bigger decision than we can make, but we do want to allow the general public to make this decision, and for democracy and for the voice of the Nederland community to be heard on these matters. So please participate, and please talk to your friends about it and encourage them to do the same.
Quick question before we break to the town clerk. How many registered voters do we have, and how many voted in the last election?
There are 1,175 registered voters, give or take. And I'd have to check the most recent official election results to give you the exact number of ballots received. I don't want to give you a spoke on the number.
Okay, thanks very much.
Then we,
Let's take what you guys can do, 5 minute break? 5 minute break, we'll be back at 8:35 on that.
bet. Well, they get. Oh, no. Should we change the, it's not, because you can't. Well. Okay. I'm sure it'll be easier. How much time to get out of it?
Okay.
There's several ways. I looked at sort of the logistics of it, and I've looked at the, the topography of the land and where it's used and what's the safest route. Given the fact that for 7 months out of the year, it's pretty snowy, it is a quandary. And so I leave it up to either design people or to come up with, I've got several ideas that would be worth looking at the options. And I'm happy to explain them.
They have a line drawn, and then they have engineering sketches of just slices.
And are they, well, that's interesting, but are they doing that, are they doing that based on right of way that the owns or CDOT owns, or are they doing that with, it's all mine. It's kind of ballsy to do that without talking to me first. Yeah, but I mean, well, yes, I should, but. Well, I just think it's sort of shoot first and ask permission later is what they're doing. And I think that's a crappy way to do it. It's like, hey, I've been working on this for 9 years. Because this was always part of the package of my project that I'm trying to do. And, I worked with Karen, we walked it a million times. We've had people up there with the part of yeah. And so.
Well, I'll talk to you before.
Yeah, before, right.
Prices, supply chain issues, just clothing closet and pantry needs to grow.
Great. I said I would be happy to. So it's never. So are you on
On the agenda.
to talk about the
Plan, the concept, yeah.
and so I can speak with.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I think things. Sorry.
Yes.
So you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's great. Just to get it in there. I think your voice in the first.
Yeah, it is.
See. Did you see that? Yeah. Yeah, do that. Right. Get straight your budget.
Speaking of Ranger, what's the film this weekend? What's Beast?
Beast.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a street, I don't know. There's nothing out there. There's no movies out there. This is one best of what's out there. Yes. So.
We watch all the train.
Hello,
We're done now, so-
Exactly.
Hi.
So people that were. You know what? That's too much. You know, and I'm from the spirit Sunday, the other day, yesterday. And I said, okay. Sunday. Yes, I thought it was Monday. Because I just have Monday on the break. So I didn't. So I wasn't, that's why I wasn't there. So I just left up. Still sitting. Okay, listen. I know, and I'm gonna say, I don't think we're putting Jimmy Smith.
Which part?
What's.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I just.
I'm glad you said that at the end. It makes.
Yeah, we just get it.
So when everyone's ready, I think we're all here.
Here's the, yeah, something serious. Yeah, I did this.
So when you're ready, we move on to action item 6.3.
It should be quick. So at the last meeting on August 30th, I had mentioned that we need some time to pull together the resolution and make some amendments to the supplemental budget, and Rita was out of town. And so tonight was supposed to be the public hearing for the supplemental budget. We are asking that you make a motion to continue the public hearing to September 20th. I have not had a chance to connect with Rita Six yet, so we don't have any information to provide you on the supplemental budget. We just need the formality of officially moving the public hearing.
I move that we, move the public hearing to September 20th.
You should do public comment though, just.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to have a we want to open it for public comment. And this item is about, budget, supplemental budget to get us through the rest of the year. Town staff needs more time to, come up with all the figures, and we've asked for 2 weeks to come back to it on September 20th. Anyone have any comments?
For perspective, I guess we should say, we were talking, last time we were at 58, we know that that 58 is really understated.
Yes, and just for clarification, we didn't have any invoices from Boulder County Sheriff's Office, so we were really operating on a kind of a broad figure. By obtaining the invoices, we're able to identify how much a certain officer gets paid, because the way in which extra duty, and Jen, please correct me if I'm wrong, is based on what their rank is within the police department, they're going to be paid at different levels. So what we're seeing is higher ranked officers are being paid more and above the $1,000 than we had anticipated, which is going to change the way in which we calculate out how extra duty is paid. Is that right, Jen? Did I miss?
Yeah, their extra duty rate is based on their years of longevity and their hourly rate. And you will find when you start having posting the double time that you're gonna have officers signing up that don't normally do extra duty because it's a nice opportunity, essentially, so.
So now that we have these financial figures, that you can create a better estimate, and then knowing that currently we're asking for daily coverage. And so we'll come back to the Board of Trustees, which is a much higher figure, but I'd like to talk with Rita about that. And that's also what we'll come to on September 20th, is for consideration an increase in that extra duty.
Quick question, are we offering double time for all those slots?
Correct. All the slots that are currently out for September and October.
Any public comments from folks online or in the room? So if there's no public comments, then we could make a motion.
I make a motion to defer the 2022 supplemental budget discussion, the public hearing to continue till the September 20th session. At which point, is that going to work for you, Marianne?
Yes.
Okay, at which point we will address it then. In questions before we go further, is this going to be a discussion item at that point?
No, so we were bringing it back to as an action item for the official public hearing and vote of approval. If the Board of Trustees would like us to bring this back as a discussion item, then I would recommend you put the public hearing at a different date in October.
Thanks for the clarification. We have a second.
I will second. Mayor Giblin,
Yes?
Trustee Severs,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahol,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yeah.
and Trustee Blakemore. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. So now we move on to discussion items. And the first one, subpoint 1, is Nederland Food Pantry Proposal. Project concept.
Well, can I just offer a point of clarification before you start? So I want to just clarify, this is a concept review. If the Board of Trustees gives them feedback that this is worth pursuing, it will come back as a land application, which would then make it a quasi judicial item. So this is just concept review in nature.
Nicole Cavallino, Gilpin County. So just to get started, I think everybody should have the packet. It's kind of hard to see from up here, but if everybody has a packet, I'll follow along from there. I'm the executive director of the Nederland Food Pantry. I've been the executive director since February 1st of this year. I've had some pretty great roles in this town. I started actually in ACC several years ago. Thank you, Macy, for all of your service. Thank you all for all of your service. I also was able to have the opportunity to lead the seniors program, the Nederland area seniors, as their director through COVID, and created the meal delivery program that kept our seniors home and safe and fed during that really crucial time. Like I said, though, I'm the executive director now of the Nederland Food Pantry, and I would say on my first week of work here in this position, I had 2 really significant meetings. One with one of our funders, United Way, and one with our fire department. And in the fire department meeting, I was walked through the West Wing where our food pantry is located, and I was informed of just how important it is that we have a plan to move out of this West Wing. If you're not aware of it, this is a packet, I'm sure you might be aware of it. In the West Wing, we actually have the food pantry 6 days a week. We're open Monday through Friday on appointment, and then we're open every Saturday from 10 to noon on a scheduled operation. And we see anywhere between 50 to 70 individuals serving over 100 people and families weekly through that Saturday service. We're also open on all the fourth Thursday of the month. And that's actually in coordination with a human service fair that we do right in this room, where we actually bring all of our partners together, everything from EFA, Boulder County AAA, we have mental health partners, people, Center for People with Disabilities, Veteran Services. That all comes into this room once a month for our community members to have one place to actually get the resources they need, and that is coordinated through the food pantry. So all of our operation pretty much happens in this building right now. Not only are we the pantry, but we are also, and it's a little deceiving by our name, but we're also the gardens. So we have the gardens all around the west wing, and then we also have the clothing closet. So we're the clothing closet, the garden, and the pantry, all coming right out of that west wing. When I met with those two really important meetings on my first week, I was informed by the fire department of just how vulnerable our resources were. And vulnerable in the sense that because we're in a building, we're in the side of the building that doesn't have sprinklers, we don't have a fire alarm system inside of the building. It really concerned me as a new executive director of an organization that's responsible for feeding over 12,000 individuals annually in the Peach area. So I sat on that for a minute, and then my next meeting was with United Way, who right off the bat asked me, "What's your plan if an emergency happens?" They were very aware that we were in a situation that we were in our building without our fire sprinklers and all of that. And I unfortunately did not have an answer, but I was definitely concerned because I had just met with the fire chief and was made very aware of our situation. So on that first week as the executive director of the Nederland Food Pantry, I really started getting my wheels turning on what are we going to do here. This is very important. This is something that is a very vulnerable resource that not only feeds our community on a daily basis, but in an emergency, we are the food resource for the Peak area until American Red Cross comes in and supports us. But for the most part, we are the local source of food, clothing, and basic needs in our Peak area. So on that, we just started brainstorming. My board with Dawn, Katrina Harms, she's my operations manager. We started just thinking, what can we do? What can we do? This has definitely been something that we have thought of for a while, and we knew that it was important, but it really became a priority of mine right off the bat. So we started brainstorming. From being in this town I've been working in the town in various positions for over 5 years now. I've always had my eye on that southwest lower section of the east parking lot, if I say it correctly, which is actually right outside the store, just past the driveway. So in talking to Dawn one evening, I was, we're trying to brainstorm, what are we going to do? We have to get out of this space. But where are we going to go? Land is really hard to find. Right now, we're in about 1,800 square feet. We would need a minimum of 2,500 square feet to really operate to meet the needs of our community that are continually growing. And that would be to house the pantry, the closet, and our gardens. So we were talking, and the idea of this parking lot came up. And to my surprise, Dawn was supportive right off the bat about it. And I thought, oh my goodness, okay, let's try and see if this is a possibility. So brought it to my board, and they were in full support of the idea of at least presenting it to the planning commission. So we did that back in July. We got a unanimous yes on it, which was really just wonderful to feel all of that support. That was really, really awesome. We got a lot of great feedback on how to present it, and here we are today. So I'm presenting you to you today, and I'm asking you for support in having us relocate to the southwest corner of the lower east parking lot. So then that way the town can actually do whatever you want to do with that side of the building, whatever your plan is. But we want to get out of the way, and we want to be safe, and we want to secure our very, very vulnerable resources, which is our food and clothing and basic needs for our community. So I'm here today to ask you to support us in the idea of relocating, but also in us pursuing funding to build that building. that would be there. It would be a 2,500 square foot building, a steel building, 2,500 square foot in a footprint. We are intending though to have 2 stories with an elevator, fully ADA accessible. That building would be able to provide us with, again, the food pantry, the clothing closet. We have designs, which I'll go through, to have the gardens actually cascade down the south side of the parking lot. And what we're asking for is support in pursuing funding. At this point in time, we are not asking anything other financial from the town. I'm hoping that we can actually gain some really great capital funds through earmarks with, we are actually very much supported by Congressman Goose to follow some earmarks this spring. And I really happen to love grant writing. So under that, I think that we have a really great possibility of getting funded for this building. So just to start, that's a little bit of a summary of what I'll go through, but I want to go through some basic facts of who we are, what we do, just so you have an idea. I know this is a big ask, so I want to feel very transparent that you understand what we do and why it's so important that we stay as close as we can to the community center. So, and having that be our location. So just to start off with, we're a nonprofit, 501c3. We get all of our funding through grant funds, donations, and truly individual bags of food that our community brings in to stock our shelves. The majority of our food, though, does come from community food share. So, and right out of Louisville, we do 2 deliveries a week on Mondays and Fridays, and we bring in anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 pounds of food a week from community food shares specifically. That includes milk, cheese, meats, cereal, crackers, canned foods, prepared entrees, everything that you would need to feed your family. And we provide that at no cost to any community member that needs food that comes through our doors. We do not ask for any sort of financial paperwork or background or anything. We need you to be a resident of the P2P area. Otherwise, we welcome you. We serve, as I mentioned, anywhere. Right now, it's actually increasing pretty regularly, but last year we served 12,000 individuals. I would say this year we're probably going to be closer to 15,000 as the need just continues to increase. The programs that we have, as I mentioned, we do food distribution on Saturdays and the 4th Thursday, and every day during the week by appointment. We have the community gardens. We manage them down below, right just past First Street. And then our pantry gardens, which really wrap around the building. And then the clothing closet. We also though store, and this was one of the big highlighted pieces, is that we store the peak to peak regions emergency food supply. So just keeping that in mind, I think that is really a highlighted point here that we need to make sure that that stays safe. Again, like I mentioned, we host the monthly human services health fair right in this room with all of those great partners that we work with. And we provide food everywhere from Jamestown, Ward, all the way to Cold Creek through pop-up pantries. And then actually we partner with Hamilton County Food Services also. And we've got a really great relationship with them at this point in time. And it's been really nice that we're sharing resources with them also. Moving forward. So just some reasons for the building relocation concept. The West Wing, we are so absolutely grateful that we have the space there. I want to start with that. We've been able to provide so much food, so many service resources in that space that we have truly outgrown it because it was really never intended to serve the amount of people and the really what we've become in growing with the community's needs. Second point is that because we store the emergency food supply, it's a little scary that we are in a building that does not have sprinklers in it, especially with just, goodness, we've been really blessed this year that, you know, I don't even want to say it, but we've had a really good year so far. But we are in a building that supplies all of that and stores all of that food, and we could lose it. And it would be difficult on our community. It would be even harder to explain to my funders why we didn't act quicker on making a plan to keep it safe. So, my third point is, having a centralized location. Because we serve the peak to peak region, it's very important that we stay in a centralized location and that we're accessible to the community. We would not be moving that Human Services Fair out of this room. This is an ideal room for the Human Services Fair. It's centrally located. And also, I think sometimes to change an address too far for an activity like that, we don't really want to mess with it. This works out really, really nicely. Our plan is to have the food pantry, the gardens, and the clothing closet over there, but to remain this as our Human Services Fair area. But to keep it centralized. So if we were able to move into that parking lot area in an emergency, we would still be right here. This location, as you know, is our shelter in an emergency. If we don't have another alternative or we're able to come here, this is where we come first. We need to be able to have our food resources available in close proximity to this building for emergency services and emergency response. Right now, we happen to be right there, which is great. But if the emergency for some reason took out that area, it wouldn't be so great. The building that we are proposing would be a steel structured building. It would have all of the sprinklers, everything that we would need to be able to stay safe, as safe as we could be in a fire. So that would be one definite plus to it. The south parking lot, the southwest lower section of the east. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's a whole entire mouthful. Right now, it's definitely underutilized. As I've watched it over the years, we have some trailers that are there. I know right now Boulder County has their trailer there, which is a really essential trailer because that's our emergency trailer. But in the design that I'll be going over, we've actually stepped a little bit even outside from that. So we're not even really impinging on that space so much. So even if those trailers need to stay there, I mean, it would be nice if they didn't, so we would have more room maybe for parking, but we're even taking that into consideration with this. So biggest point in this is that because we're a nonprofit, we actually can apply for funding for this building. And we have a lot of support at this point in time to make our resources secure. And I think that if we can find a location that is centralized, accessible to the community, keeps our resources safe, we would have a really great chance at getting funding for this building. The funding that we would be looking for would be anywhere between 1.5 and 2 million for that structure. We are very, very fortunate to have an actual architect on our board, Karen Siebert. So she drew up these plans we'll go through. And we guesstimated that at about $400 per square foot for the 2,500 base square foot building. So any questions so far before I move on into this slide?
Yeah, I'm curious on the, you talked about terracing it down the hill. How much of the hill do we have?
That's an interesting, up with them.
I think that's town right away on the other side of the fence, the setback, that it's all there. So it's just wild grass and weeds right now. Don, Eric and I won't be able to hear you. We can repeat that.
Okay, it's pretty much town property right now that just cascades down. We would also, in discussing this, we've talked to so many different people in town. I didn't want to come into this really not doing as much research as I could. We've talked with the sustainability board, Erica, we were chatting with her about it, and we would love to actually make this into a beautification project on that side of the building. And I don't know if you've seen it right now, but we are blossoming all over the West Wing right now with our sunflowers. So besides the produce that we're producing and just poundage by the week. So I think that we can actually make it into something pretty also on that area. And from what it sounds like, the town owns the slope, so it should be okay to be able to work on with approval. So any other questions?
Have you thought about matching funds? Will you need those to get the idea? Get those.
As of right now, any grant that I'm looking at they're full funded grants. I haven't come across any grants that I would be interested in applying for that need a match. But even at that, we're hoping to start, excuse me, our capital funds campaign in the spring. And so if we do need matching funds, we would go after it with our capital funds as we started in the springtime. So just moving forward, I'm going to go between slide 4 and 5. I think it's over 5 in your packet. It's the color slide that is the drawing, the sketch that Karen came up with for us. And then the next slide is kind of just showing you where we are now. And so the one that has the blue and green boxes on it, that just shows what we're using now in the West Wing versus what we would be asking for in that space down in the parking lot. So if you can take a peek at that, we would be going from 1,800 square feet really divided within the West Wing and using every cubby space that we possibly can for food storage in that area to a really efficient storage area, which I actually, just to add on, for energy sources, right now, I can't imagine what we use in energy in that room, just from the way that it's set up. But we would absolutely plan with our new building to be solar, to make sure that everything is up to energy codes, energy efficient also. Even though it would be a bigger building, we would absolutely want to follow through and make sure that we're using our energy as efficiently as possible. So some of the benefits, they're listed to the side there, is that number one, the town of Nederland, you guys can proceed with whatever you want to do with that building. I know it's been talked about for a while now that there are a lot of plans for demolition or whatever it might be on that side of the building. But having us there and occupying the space is really not helping you move forward in anything that you can do with that. So besides the safety of our resources and the vulnerability of our resources, we'd also like to just get out of the way and give the town the option of moving forward. It would have minimal impact on the community center's parking lot. We measured it out. It's about 12 to 15 parking spaces. When we were looking at that, because I do see that as being one of the major things to consider, because parking is an issue in this town. We were talking about it, and as we were discussing it, for the most part, any holiday or event that happens in this town, that would be Frozen Dega Days, Holiday Mountain Market, Mountain Forum for Peace, we usually close our doors anyway. So any parking spots that we would have available for the food pantry are usually open anyway, because we try to get out of the way for those weekends. So I'm hoping that shouldn't be that much of an impact on parking. The steel building construction will completely be up to code, which is something we're really not to right now. And it would be ADA accessible, as I mentioned. We would hope for putting an elevator in the plans. It will be that. So we can use the upper level for offices. A bathroom would be just really great to have in our facility, because right now we use this bathroom to wash our hands or anything like that. It would be nice to have that available. But then we would also have office space. We have a conference room for our board meetings. That sort of thing to actually function as an organization with working space. That would just be so helpful for our pantry. That would just be very, very helpful. It would satisfy our funders' concerns regarding their investment. As I mentioned, when I spoke to the United Way and didn't have a plan, I felt embarrassed. I wasn't ready for that question. I don't want to not be ready again, at least in moving forward in something. This would be our first option. We obviously would need approval from you to move forward, but to have this as an option in moving forward, I think that would make our funders very happy. And I think that it would secure their investment more to know that we have a plan. We have something in action. Let's see. Yep. So again, staying in the established location that we are under our address, I do feel like that would, it just keeps us centralized. We're accessible. We've looked at several buildings in the area, thinking that maybe we can adapt something to our needs. We looked at the old apothecary. We looked at the stone garage. We've looked at just different lots of land. Besides accessibility for just our community and just getting there, parking, that sort of thing. To me personally, and understanding our clientele, privacy is a really big factor. And if we were able to stay in the community center parking lot in the property itself, the privacy of coming to a food pantry for your resources is also maintained. And it would just be as neutral as coming into the community center versus getting a storefront on First Street where you would have to be walking around with your bags of food and such like that. So the idea of having it here, again, gives our clients even that much more privacy. So some of the challenges, just to mention, is that number one, you just may not be interested in this. So we'll talk about that. If the Board of Trustees isn't interested in it, that could be one of our challenges. Neighborhood opposition, that's a possible challenge, absolutely. We have spoken with several of the neighbors that were actually bordering the property, and I haven't had much opposition come from it. So, but we never know. That's a possible challenge. Funding being unavailable, I don't see that as being a realistic challenge in that I think that we have a service that is so needed in this community that I think that we can get creative enough with funding requests that we will have success in funding with that. And as I mentioned, we have Congressman Neguse supporting us in searching for funding. So I think that's a big, strong check on in our list. Any sort of code restrictions, utility access, those sort of things, though, we did actually talk to Cynthia, we talked to Miranda about just different restrictions that may happen. It doesn't seem like at this point in time, there are many that have been identified. Again, though, because this is a concept, we would have to be then moving through the process of planning. We would do a project plan and make sure everything's good and set. But at this point in time, nothing much has shown itself as being in opposition. And then again, any unforeseen property issues, things we're not really sure of, we wouldn't know yet until we move forward more with the plan. So the next slide, any questions on that though? Anybody? Okay. I'm going to go back, if we can, to the sketch.
Actually, I have one question. It's not challenges about neighborhood opposition. Well, the hours, you mentioned hours, the hours change if you have a new facility.
No, not that I foresee. And again, I don't want to change much. I don't really want to change our address much. I want to keep it as easy moving as possible. So for right now, it would still be the Saturday 10 to noon, and then the fourth Thursday 10 to noon also. So if we go to the sketch, you can see we are behind. We gave ourselves a good distance behind the driveway. And that is primarily because we want to be able to start construction as soon as we possibly can. And that may mean that at some point in time, that driveway may not be there anymore. And we don't want to have any problem with the fact that our construction is close to that driveway. So we are planning to actually build far enough away from the driveway that if that is part of the construction plan for the west wing, that our structure really should not bother with it so much. If you notice, the green area to the left, that would pretty much be where the trailers are right now. Karen just made it nice and pretty for us. And then she has the beautification project of the gardens coming down that south slope. Beautifully south facing weather also. So we would get some beautiful sunshine. We are hoping to put a greenhouse on that side for our winter months. And then basic, like a walk-through garden down through the escalated side there. We put in 4 parking spaces, one with a delivery access. So right now, the way we do our deliveries is through the west wing. There's that little side corridor. I will tell you, in the snow and in our cold winter months, we don't have heat in that side of the building. But to get deliveries there is also very challenging because you're actually outside in the elements as you're bringing food in. So we were really hoping that in our new building, we'd have something that we can drive into during our winter months and be able to unload in that sense. You'll notice there's solar on the roof. That is something that we were absolutely preparing for. The inside of the building at this point in time, we really haven't designed as of yet, since we're still at a concept. But the square footage of its own would be 2,500 square feet with a possibility of 5,000 if we do the second level. And it would still be under that 35-foot code. So that should work out good. And it would house, again, the pantry, the closet, and the gardens all in that space. So on that, any questions about the sketch or the map or?
That'd be helpful. Yes. So the town would not be charging rent for the property, like we're currently not doing. We're currently not charging rent. Is that correct?
I don't think we're that far along. It hasn't been discussed.
Okay. And then the other question I have is about traffic flow. That existing driveway is just single lane. So is there any investigation being done and making that 2 lanes with the new model and construction of the community center?
I believe that traffic flow will definitely change when the site plan is developed and once the west wing is gone. It's not good. If I can say that the impact of the pantry being in that location would be no greater and actually less than probably a Friday or Saturday night movie or an event here. It wouldn't be any more impactful than what already happens here all the time. So yes, that's going to be an element that will definitely be considered as we move forward into the, the site redevelopment of that section. But it's hard, it would be there for a while because the west wing would have to be demolished first before we can move into that. And that's a whole nother thing. Because again, it's just a concept. And we discussed at length, could this site location work and be a separate thing from the site redevelopment or the site redevelopment happen around it? And the answer is yes, it absolutely can. There's plenty of space to work with.
Yeah, I can see that. And maybe opening up the east entrance or exit in order to get the traffic flowing if that's needed.
So it's hard when you have the structure as it exists now to reimagine. There's people who have that gift to look at something that exists and go, it could be this. And so if you can imagine the trailer's gone, the luge line's gone, this wall that comes up into this section of the building and that upper east, just everything there, it would have to be re-excavated, replanned, reimagined, and redesigned. But there's definitely ways to do that, to make this a much more functional place. And perhaps the main part of the building then, once again, is not in the lower east side. Maybe it becomes upper again. But there would definitely be a way to get down there that isn't as horrid as the current access is. I don't know how else to say that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, are there any concerns about not being connected to the rest of the community center? That particular location is hard to walk to as well from the rest of the community center. And I was wondering if, the eastern side of the parking lot, the northeastern side were considered, and even the southeastern corner of the upper lot were considered, and why they were disqualified. They were.
Well, I can address that in the first part of that. When we have pantry, and whether it's an appointment time or on our Saturdays or our fourth Thursdays, we actually don't encourage people walking through the MPR room from the pantry. So right there, we don't generally have people, we actually ask people to walk around as it is right now, just for safety reasons of coming through the MPR room. So the access to the community center, it would be It would be a little bit more of a walk, definitely in elements, but I think really if I think about why people would want to come into the community center from us, if not for dance classes or something that is going on in the community center, maybe a movie or something. Usually people want to go into the community center from where we are located currently to go to the bathroom. And we are hoping to actually have, and we're planning to have bathrooms in our facility. So I would imagine that would be the main reason why somebody would need to scurry from building to building for right now.
Sure. And if there was an emergency situation with inclement weather and the food is in a separate building, I guess that was what I was also kind of thinking.
Sure. Well, actually, we would be a separate entity altogether, so we could actually have food distribution right from the building. So in an emergency, we would probably keep the food, I'm assuming, within the pantry, and that would just become the holding place for our emergency food.
Okay, thanks. And then in terms of the other potential locations, is the reason why they were not presented here?
I think mainly because in my vision of this, I've always looked at that spot as the least parking spot. And so I thought, to go with the least invasion of parking spaces, that's how I proposed this one. I know that if we look at the east parking lot, that parking lot does get full more often because it's very close to the main entrance. And that was really my point on it, I suppose. But I would be open to any part of the parking lot. I think that for the most part, though, that one, because it's the least utilized for parking on a regular basis, is why it made the most sense to as a concept.
I can speak to that as well, Eric. I believe that the pantry they're looking to get out of their current space into a more permanent location sooner than later. And if they really relocated into the upper lot, it would make it very difficult. That would affect the demo of the west wing that comes along. That is going to need some space to take that part of the building down. And then also to, like Karen mentioned, reimagine the space and the elevations that currently exist to make it more user-friendly and to get the most potential use out of it in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm hugely in favor of building in the lower lot. And I've been waiting for a proposal like this for some time, so thank you for putting it together. And generally speaking, I think this is a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. So if anybody, we can open it up for discussion. Again, I will pose my question, is that does the Board of Trustees support the Nederland Food Pantry in pursuing funding to build a new facility on the southwest section of the lower east parking lot of the Nederland Community Center? With the idea that with your approval, we would then move forward in constant communication with the town as funding comes through. And we would pursue as many opportunities as possible to fund this fully. Again, we are looking for 1.5 to 2 million for the building, and we would begin the process. So I open it up to questions.
I'm thrilled that 2 embarrassing meetings provided the heat necessary to get the process started. And the speed is amazing, but it simply can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you. Just sit around and think.
Yeah.
I wanted to get on it, so thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi, this is Tanya. I want to say I fully support this project. I think it's wonderful. And I think having it in this location allows you to access that southern sun for your community gardens. So on that note, I think it's also a good location, and I'm grateful for everybody for putting that together.
Thank you, Tanya.
Thanks, Tanya. Jesse, do you have
Yeah, thank you. This is really great. I'm in support. A couple of comments and questions I'd like to bounce off you. Which of the neighbors you chatted with, if you don't mind?
Linda Glasser. Yeah, Linda and Danny, and since Linda happens to be on the planning commission, she actually, when we presented it, she was one of the ones that said it could be a beautification or project, and I thought, oh my goodness, so yes, that it's beautiful coming right from a neighbor. So, and then I believe, Dawn, did you speak to other
I
neighbors?
reached out to a couple others that I hadn't heard of. Linda has talked to neighbors, when she's walking her dog around. Jesse reached out to you. You're one of them. So there are others, but I don't see this being any more impactful than what already happens here, and possibly much less so. It's because there's no direct, there is as direct as it gets to that location, honestly.
Yeah, I'm fully in support, and yeah, in my household, I think I usually hold 50% of the household though, but sometimes less. And so I'd like it if you guys would reach out to Angela. She, definitely wants to be included on that, and then yeah, consider myself close to all my neighbors on the street, and I know that they would all appreciate just kind of having some opportunity to weigh in on this. I love it. I'm the one here voting, so you can count on my support. And I would like to see the little section there on the west developed. It's in a state of unsightly disrepair at the moment.
I totally agree, and it's like right now, I would consider it like.
Yeah, I think it's blight. I would love to walk to the movie theater or walk up to these meetings via that corridor. And happy to help work on that trail if it could be of assistance, or we can get some funding for Parks and Rec to make a nice trail there. Overall, I love it. I love the access for pedestrians off of 4th Street. Just me being on the BOT, everybody can count on me to support and vote in support of walkability and bikeability on anything that comes up in that department. I want to see us all walking and biking and waving, getting around town that way as much as possible. I would also love to see you have water collection on here. I'd really like to see that really well done. I just did some quick math, and I think we could harvest up to 57,000 gallons of water per year with our average rainfall with the 2,500 square foot roof. And that could be used for fire suppression as well as watering gardens. And being a gardener somewhat myself, not to get in trouble, one of the things I've learned is that rainwater really makes the plants happy.
Yes.
And then for us as a BOT and also for town staff, I would really like to see us pay attention to buildings that we're abandoning and that we're not currently occupying in conjunction with building new buildings. I'm in favor of building new buildings, but I think we shouldn't be just leaving buildings to sit and decompose. And I guess one last thing is just parking. So that was taken into consideration. I heard you say that, and then I assume that that we're not cutting into the requirement that the community center would have for parking for its occupancy and things of that nature. That's all. Good to go. Great. Yeah, I look forward to working with you on it, and I support it. So it's great. Yeah.
So I broke ground before.
Yes, I have some comments too, but I think I wanted to open up for public comments. I can do that in discussion items. I'd like to. If you have something, come on up. And Cole, if you could.
I will step just up. First of all, I want to know why you wore those shoes tonight.
My only clothes so choose.
They look good, but they're not, they can't be comfortable.
They're not comfortable, Kayla.
And not Nederland. K-11's 1250 Eldora Road. What I love about this project is I always refer to Nederland as the town of least resistance. We put things where they're the least amount of people saying they don't want them there, not where she should be. So it's really delightful and encouraging to see a project that is going to be where it should be, and then it makes sense. Just a little bit of institutional knowledge about this building, because Dawn and I were here from the get-go. The reason the backdoor theater is called the backdoor theater is because that wasn't the back door. This was the front door always to the building, and this is where most of the activity took place and went in there. So when we start thinking about reimagining what really is going to go in the West Wing, that's going to take a lot of time to do that. The other thing that Nicole did, you probably know this, but I think the town is going to need to sell them their footprint for $1 so that they can get their funding, because you have to own your land.
Very costly.
Yes. So that's something you all might think about. I'm here to say that I'm totally in support of this project. The backdoor theater operates in the evenings, so our parking is not going to be impeded by this building being here for us to fill up the parking lot. When we do that, we fill up the upper, we go down the road. I mean, it's just like the gains that are going to happen for the community and the people in this community that are in need far outweigh any kind of discomfort for anybody having to walk a couple of feet more. So I hope you all really support this project, and I applaud all the work that the food pantry gets done. And when this building started out, it was meant to be an incubator. We started out putting things and people in organizations in this building to incubate and to find their true potential, and then to move on to where they want to finally be. And the Wild Bear is doing that. They used to be in this building, several different places in this building. And so for the food pantry to be morphing into what they're going to become, which is marvelous, I think is great. And I give so much credit to, if any of you have been in the food pantry, to see what they have done in that much space, that they can do what they do with that much space, and what they've turned it into is truly a miracle. So given an opportunity to have an imagined space that is the best thing they can have, I think the sky's the limit on them being able to really provide so much for so many people. And we should be proud of the ability for the folks in this town to help one another. So thank you.
Thanks, Kayla. Anyone else have any public comments?
Spray, 339 Sunrise Lane, Hilton, former resident of Nederland. I think that this is a slam dunk, as in things that need to be done here. There's more people and more people that are coming in need of this. And it's because of how the economy of the nation is going and everything like that. And there's nothing that we have real control over. But this we do have control over. And giving them the space and ability to be able to unload, load, and find more food as necessary to have a place to put it is an excellent thing. Plus having a hillside be used over there. Years and years ago, we were going to put apartments on that hillside. So I think flowers and plants and vegetables is a much better way to go.
Thanks, Chris. What else have we able to cover? Yeah.
I clarificate my point. When Nicole was giving a presentation and she mentioned the fire department, for anyone who might not know, the plan was always to demolish that west wing. And for a number of reasons, it was not part of the center remodel back in 2005 to 2007. And it just sat there and it was not being used. So we took advantage of the space when there was so much need for it. was never intended to be occupied. It was intended for storage. And as Nicole said, the needs grew. And that's why it's necessary. That's why there isn't an active sprinkler system or alarm system there. It was never intended to be occupied by people. So it's very important that the fire department just let us know it's very important that we get a plan to rehome the operations that are currently there. Most of the rest of the West Wing is just storage. So that's easy. We can move those folks into containers if we have to, while they look for space. But this is an essential operation for real people. So that's why that's important. So I just wanted to throw that, make sure everybody understood why that was the situation there.
Thanks, Don. Any other comments?
Dennis Whalen, 57 Aspen Way. I chair the board of directors for the food pantry. I just wanted to invite all the board of trustees to come and visit the food pantry. See what we have. We'd really like to show ourselves off.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Is there anyone online who has any public comments on the relocation? You don't see anyone?
No.
Go ahead and close the public comment. Yeah. I definitely think it's great. It does seem like a location that has been just sitting there waiting for something useful to, waiting for a good use. It seems like a good use. I like the landscaping and the fall off onto the south for terraced, gardens, greenhouse set up there. And it's awesome how much water can be gathered. And it seems like it would be out of the way of other projects that go around the main buildings or the other west wing. And I think it increases privacy for the people. I mean, the privacy is a big, I have friends and people I know well who use it, and I think privacy is important, and I think it gives a little more privacy from the highway, which I think will be appreciated. So I think it's a great location. I definitely support this proceeding. So, do we need to do a?
No, this is a discussion item, so I think just kind of a nod of 4 that you are giving them the green light to continue forward.
If there's any doubt about me supporting it, I'm 199% behind it. So, thank you so much for spearheading this and all the work that you're doing on grants. I'm really excited.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any virtual head nods from those dialed in?
Yeah, I'd love to see this continue.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, you have my nod here for sure.
Thank you, Tom.
I think we have a 6. So.
Very good. More than 4. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much. And we'll be in full communication with you as we move forward. So thank you so much for your time. This is a really exciting project. Thank you.
Thanks for your time and well organized.
Thank you very much.
Presentation. Next, discussion item 7.2 is the Nederland Police Department update. With Miranda, can you give us the update?
Yes, so I just wanted to give you an update specifically as it relates to recruitment efforts. So a few weeks ago, the town started kind of a more targeted, enhanced recruitment effort, and I'm happy to report that we have 20 applications and or letters of interest for police officers and or sergeants. Kind of a pretty even 50-50 split there. Some are eligible, some are not, but I think it's just a great flow of applications. Normally it was pretty stale there where we'd receive one every once in a while. We were in conversation with 2 marshal candidates. Those marshal candidates were referred to us internally. Unfortunately, as of the end of last week, both have withdrawn their applications for various reasons. So really, while 20 applications is incredible, and I've been talking with them and kind of working them through the process, we need to have a marshal. We can't have officers start without a marshal. They obviously have to run through an FTO program, so that marshal is key. So tonight, I'm really hoping to just kind of find out where the Board of Trustees, where your head's at. Obviously, there's a couple options here. One is to open up the marshal position publicly, in which case you would be looking for a permanent hire more so than an interim, and see what kind of applications you get. I notified a few of the sergeant candidates that this was happening, and a couple of them has expressed interest in wanting to go for the marshal and or knew of people who may be interested in going for that position. So that's one option. Another option is to continue to kind of go the interim marshal route and see what maybe the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police can provide us, or see if there's any other routes we could go in terms of interim. And then, of course, the kind of bringing us back to that discussion is Boulder County Sheriff Office, and a contract with them is always on the table. And so I'm just looking for a little bit of directive from the board on how you want to move forward, given the space we're in now as it relates to recruitment of all positions within the police department.
Thanks, Miranda. I think we start off with some comments from trustees and then open it up. Maybe just some clarifying questions. How about if we start with that? Clarifying questions with trustees and then go to public comment. Do any trustees have any questions?
I do. If we were to find a candidate, how long is the background check process these days?
So we do, one other change is that our background check investigator is no longer working with us, and so we do need to secure a new background investigator. Our last background check investigator could do background checks within 10 business days. I'm not sure what the industry, if that's consistent with industry standards or what it might take for another organization to take that over, but that is something we would have to secure. I think we're still probably looking at 3 to 4 weeks of the process, because it's not just background, it's background, psych, physical, and then of course the interview oral board.
Okay, well, it's probably for the best. We have a new background check company, so I'm happy for that. But you have to locate that company and then find out how long that takes. That kind of affects things a little bit. And what do you think?
You know, when we did start with AG investigations, we have reached out to some other agencies, and so I do still have those contacts. It's just a significant cost difference. AG investigations was able to do that for, I believe it was $490 when we first started, and Marshall Byland was able to talk it down to $400. Other companies are more like $1,000 a background check.
Right. Okay.
If time is finished, I have some clarifying questions. So I saw the September Netherland extra duty that Jennifer Feinlevin sent at August 23rd. And it showed that we didn't have anyone from Boulder County Sheriff's Office for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. And so is that still the case?
Yes.
Okay.
And I just want to offer a clarification. So on those days, what it means is we don't have an officer positioned in Netherland under extra duty, but Boulder County Sheriff's Office still responds to all priority 1 calls, which would be in progress and felony and those life or death calls on the days of which we don't have a dedicated extra duty officer here in Netherland.
And they could be in the surrounding area because they service Boulder County, but worst case, they'd be coming from Boulder, from down the hill.
They can be coming from Allen's Park. You're talking about generally the mountain car responding. So Boulder County obviously is a big county. They will respond to in progress calls when available.
Okay. And then we have we don't have Boulder County Sheriff's Office from 8 PM to 10 PM in the evenings?
Correct. Those are all going to be priority one calls from 8 to 10.
And let's see, we have the overnight contract with them.
Correct.
Okay, so there are some times when we don't have Boulder County Sheriff's Office in the Nederland Town Department. And then when the calls, when there is a call that comes in during that time, and it's not that level 1 emergency, it goes to you, Miranda, is that right?
It goes through dispatch, and dispatch is going to take it back to Nederland Police Department, extension 1, which is the general voicemail extension. That voicemail will turn into a voice to text email that goes to myself, Jen, and Troy.
Okay. Okay. And then from there, you decide who handles the call.
Yeah, we have another call. So Troy was out on PTO, so he is back tomorrow. So we have a call tomorrow to clarify that. Obviously, more often than not, those calls are going to need to be handled by someone within the law enforcement team. Troy would be likely to be the most appropriate. But for example, there were some calls this weekend that I could handle, a lost purse, someone wanting to know about how they need to handle a vehicle being towed, those things, or more code complaint calls or something that can be taken on by administrative staff.
Okay, and then once Jen leaves the end of September, then, I mean, for the calls that need to law enforcement to be, what will we do with those?
They're going to be held. So any call that requires a case number or some sort of report to be written is going to be held until a staff member is on, because Troy is not an officer. He is a police and court clerk. So they will be held for staff, or I would say we're going, the decision to go with Boulder County, then of course we'd have to talk about that. But currently, as it stands with Boulder County, all of those non-emergent cases are held until there's a staff member available to respond to them.
And investigations are being done by Colorado Bureau of Investigation?
If they rise to the level of a major incident, in which case Boulder County Sheriff's Office will contact the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to coordinate those investigations.
And is there a cost to us for CBI?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, yeah, you have, there's certain requirements that have to be met, and we are small enough that there's no cost.
And then for the cases that do not rise to that level, who handles the investigation on those cases?
Those will be held until there is a law enforcement officer within Nederland Police Department who can handle the investigation.
And then I'm wondering what sort of burden this is on you and the staff to be handling these extra duties, and I understand. Now, if an email is sent to the town marshal, that goes to you, is that right?
It's a police at nederlandco.org email address, and so it goes to myself, Jen, and Troy. You know, I think when asking about the impact on staff, Troy just got back today, and so I really need to talk to him. You know, of course, based on some of his communication today, there's some acknowledgement that he, of course, is going to be the most appropriate person to kind of log these calls and hold them for a future officer. My only role would be to handle code complaints or things like the ones this weekend that wouldn't really even require a case number of sorts, because it's just someone, you know, looking for a lost item, wondering about a car on the property.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions before we turn to public comment?
I do have a question, if I may.
Yes.
Over here, yeah, sorry. Yeah, who's gonna be taking the things like social service referrals? Or, yeah, for example, social service referrals?
So I've yet to coordinate with Boulder County Sheriff's Office. I know that Marshall Feinlove can ask a few of these additional questions, and I have not talked with the division chiefs about those components.
And a clarifying question to Jennifer Feinlove. How is that usually processed?
They come to they come to the department and then, I mean, right now, or it would have been me or assigned to an officer.
A clarifying question. So social service calls like a mental health specific, or is that, what is that?
Department of Human Services. So when somebody files a report, like either a mandatory reporter or somebody calls in and has some concerns, safety concerns, either with regards to children or adult protective services, all of those get referred to law enforcement.
Someone reports, whether it's, someone's gonna harm themselves or another.
That's something different. I mean, if that would maybe fall under a safe to tell, depending on how that's reported, or that would come in as a welfare check, and depending on the content of a welfare check, that would be dispatched as a priority one. And if someone was actively about to harm themselves, then presumably that would be dispatched as a priority one call.
I think you're talking about if there's a determination made that a family environment is not safe for a child, that would be a social service referral. Is that right?
So there's a social service referral, and it may or may not get staffed by Department of Human Services. It's up to the police department then independently to decide if there was a valid concern or not.
Any other clarifying questions for Jennifer or Brandon? If not, I'd like to open up for public comment. Comment on the present status of recruitment for the Nederland Police Department. Does anyone online have a comment you'd like to share?
And just a reminder, if you're on the phone, *6.
So, hearing none, I will back to I'll end the public comment, bring it back to the board. Skips further. Okay, so I mean, as for, the actual, to center ourselves here for a second about where we're at this moment in time with this very stressful, unstable situation. Just note with regards to trying to read the future. The update we got is that we have plenty of interest, not all eligible, but nonetheless interest as for officers and sergeants. And presently our 2 marshal candidates have withdrawn their applications, and the options that were given to us would be to change from just going from an internal recruitment strategy, which is what we've done up until now, to opening it up for public recruitment, another for a marshal for the NPD. Another option is the interim marshal, which I actually have some questions more on specifically what that means. And then the third option is Over County Sheriff's Office. So I want to open up for discussion.
Have some clarifying questions then?
Yeah, thank you very much. What exactly are the parameters of an interim marshal? Like what's the carrot for someone to want to do it? And then are they just doing it while we bring these other 20 people up to, to supervise the officers and or a sergeant, and then while we're publicly recruiting for a marshal?
Right, there may be some candidates who are interested, who are retired chiefs. There's one I've spoken to who's not interested in full-time employment, but would be interested in coming in to help stabilize. One thing to note though is that you may have interim marshals who are not willing to do all the components of the job, but just more want to stabilize us from maybe a policies and procedures standpoint, and are less likely to want to do patrol. I haven't explored any of those conversations. The initial kind of plan was the two candidates we were talking to would come on in an interim capacity, but had interest in staying with us full-time, but just would start with us in an interim. I think at this point, if you were looking to open it up, you'd need to do a full hire. Because I don't think a lot of people would see the incentive if you're looking to diversify your candidates. I think an interim is still kind of a direct ask of someone.
Direct access to someone, and really at the same time, we're openly recruiting for a full-time person to. Okay, that's my clarifying question. So now we should discuss.
Yeah. So at the level of policing that we have right now, I'm concerned about public safety of our residents, the visitors, the employees. We have a lot of time when we don't have an officer here, and there's, it doesn't seem to be really adequate. It's kind of bare bones police services. And I get the feeling that it's adding additional strain to our really small staff to take on additional responsibility. So I think it's time for us to pivot. And, I'd like to bring up the idea again of a temporary contract with Boulder County Sheriff's Office so that we would have some level of police staffing all the time while we're rebuilding the department, and recruit a permanent marshal, or a permanent contract with Boulder County Sheriff's Office for full-time services. So I guess I'd like to explore that temporary contract, reach out to Boulder County Sheriff's Office again and see if they would do that for us. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Karen. Well, it's like to share what you're thinking.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not sure who it's best directed to. Sorry, this is Eric. Maybe it's Attorney Madsen, but I think that what we do need to see is some actual proposals from BCSO in order to make a decision. I'd personally like it if the board were to direct town staff to go in that direction and negotiate with BCSO so that we have some hard figures in front of us and some different coverage options in front of us so that we can make a more informed decision that isn't purely on an ideological basis at this point, because I think that we're being forced into this corner here. But my question is, the town of Lyons seems to pay a very reasonable sum of money to contract with BCSO, under $500,000 a year, while the town of Superior pays $2 million a year. And I was just wondering what anyone thinks accounts for the discrepancy in those costs.
Superior is much larger than Nederland.
So is it just the population? Is that the
Population and
factor?
so I'm just comparing the two. Yeah, I would guess that accounts for the difference. It's both the population and area covered.
Am I allowed to speak? I don't really know. I can answer that question because that's not accurate, but I don't want to.
I mean, I think it would be helpful. I think ultimately we need numbers from.
The biggest difference between the Superior contract and the Alliance contract is Superior pays for deputies to be there 100% of the time. So, what Lions does for their deputies for the day shift is, I believe it's 50% of their non-committed time for the day shift.
Right.
Miranda, and then I think it was 40 or 30% of the non-committed time for the night shift. So it's basically the way that Boulder County explains it is each of those towns figured out what they wanted for their community in terms of their services, and that's what drives and directs the cost. So Superior has a deputy that is assigned solely to Superior. They're not actually allowed to leave the town limits of Superior without unless there's something very exigent, and even prior to that, they have to get permission over the radio by a supervisor.
Got it. Thank you, Marshall Feinlevin. Yeah, that's what I suspected. So, that's what I would like to have it before us, would be sort of a 50% non-committed time contract, a 100% non-committed time contract, and maybe a few stages in between. And I personally would think that the most productive way to move forward here would be for this board to direct town staff to get those in front of us so that we can start making some decisions.
And I did, for the record, I did go to Boulder County and request that we have them totally take over for 6 months so we could rebuild the department there, and unless something's changed. They're not willing to do a contract like that. They actually have to hire 5 people to supplement us even temporarily. So adding on to the hours of our existing contract, or having a contract where they would take over for a brief amount of time while we rebuild was not an option.
Yeah, that is my understanding as well. I don't think it's the end of the world if we ask them again, but my suspicion is that it will come back the same response. So yeah, I mean, the other question is, Miranda, how reasonable would it be for this? How would you feel if the board basically asked you to, what's the right way to put this? Basically to hold both of these options open for the time being while pursuing contract negotiations with BCSO.
I have no concerns. I've been very honest and transparent with all the candidates that I've spoken with, and even the ones I called to let them know where we stand, and they're just waiting. Of course, we run the risk of losing them elsewhere, but I think they're all willing to maintain that open communication as long as I just keep them informed of where we are.
So could you both get those different contracts from BCSO, some estimates at different coverage levels, as well as continue exploring interim marshal?
Yes.
So I'm looking at the town of Lyons public safety page, and here they say they have a sergeant who acts as a town law enforcement administrator, a full-time deputy, and investigative and animal control services. And these resources are supplemented by 3 additional deputies who work out of the Lyons substation and who provide coverage to the unincorporated area surrounding Lyons. And to the idea of an interim marshal, so it seems like anyone who would want to take on the marshal position would want to be permanent, but maybe I'm misunderstanding something.
Not all of the ones who reached out want to be permanent. There is a gentleman, former chief of Vail, who would be looking to help on a temporary basis. And there may be some other options. Again, we operate off the avenues of internal referrals. And so if we open this up a little bit more, I don't know who's out there. I just know who's applied.
So you would open it up to interim marshals, public, not instead of just internally. Is that correct?
We could do that and see what happens.
Okay, I think we need to make a motion to extend the meeting.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to extend it to 10:30.
I'll second.
Trustee Lakehorn? Yes. Trustee Gonzalez?
No.
Trustee Corvalon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Holm?
No.
Trustee Severs?
No.
And Mayor Giblin?
Yes.
Is that a tie?
I think I did.
Yeah, we're tied now, so because that means no, right?
All the more reason to extend and talk about one of the things we have to talk about, the odd number of trustees. But I think the tie goes to the nose. Yeah. Well, okay, it seems unfortunate. We have 2 other things that very much relate to.
Yeah, it seems like we have a lot we have to Okay, guys.
We gotta stop packing these agendas, folks. It's too much. It's just too much. You gotta trim it down.
We have to make a decision right now about what we're gonna tell Miranda to do. I haven't even had a chance to speak yet.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. We got 2 minutes. I would like to comment to Tanya. Go for it.
I'd like to-
So I don't even know what we're saying here. We're saying hire an interim marshal, get a contract
Actually,
from
Tanya, one
county
second.
sheriff. I mean,
Tanya,
I think we need an accurate bid. We need to know exactly what we're talking. I agree with Eric there. I also, if that's what we're gonna do, if we like that, then yeah, we need to hire people in the meantime to get us through until they can come in, which would be months from now. The other option that I would entertain is put out an ad for a permanent marshal and give it a couple weeks. I don't think we have much more time than that. We've already lost so much time with these other marshals that we thought were going to work out. And
Motion to extend 10 minutes.
I will second the motion to extend the 10 minutes. Can we do that?
can we call a vote for a motion to extend 10 minutes? So Tanya can finish what she's saying and we can keep going.
Trustee Lakeborn? Yes. Trustee Cruz Ismail?
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon?
yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Mahone?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
Yes.
And Mayor Giblin?
Yes,
so what I'm saying is don't want to give it too much time, and I don't want to settle for a candidate that's not the perfect candidate for our town. I don't want the candidates we looked at last winter, none of them were great. None of them were the perfect choice. If that happens again, screw it. We have to just go with Boulder County Sheriff. We don't have the months, any luxury of time at all right now. And so if people want, the interim marshal would just be if we're going with Boulder County Sheriff, correct? Because we need somebody to help out in the meantime. Is that what that logic is?
no, it seems like the interim marshal would be someone we go with while we're openly recruiting for a full-time.
What?
Right, and interim marshal would allow you the capacity to start to rebuild because you have that leader in place to start doing FTOs with candidates. So you could start to at least bring in those police officers under an interim marshal while searching for a full-time marshal.
So some of these other candidates who want to be officers or sergeants could start working for the NPD under an NPD.
Well, I mean, I'm open to that again if we can find somebody quickly, because otherwise we need to pull the trigger and commit with Boulder County so they can start looking for people. Otherwise, we've been wasting so much time, and we don't have that.
I agree, Trustee Corvalin, and I think that the key thing here for me is that I really need to see a solid list of proposals from BCSO.
I do too, because we don't know what we're looking at.
Yeah,
We think
exactly.
it's going to be $500,700,000. I'd also want to know when it could be implemented. Is it 3 months or is it 6 months? Those are important to me.
So I feel like we should make a decision on whether we want to rebuild the department or go with Boulder County Sheriff's Office, rather than trying both of them at the same time.
Can we do that in a discussion item?
No, I don't think we can.
Well, you can because you can direct people to be working towards a certain goal. So you could direct town staff to be negotiating with Boulder County Sheriff's Office on a contract, or you can direct town staff to be working on hiring rebuilding the police department, hiring a marshal.
So, my thought, I already said, was to see if we can get like some temporary contract coverage. So we have, full coverage, like at least one officer a day, and a chief that could handle. So, I mean, if we can get an interim officer in like very quickly, then we wouldn't need that but that's
Right,
possible.
the interim marshal could also help us transition.
I'd like to hear from, if we can, so we've got 7 minutes, I'd like to hear from Jesse and Tom and myself, and then potentially talk about next.
I'm done with this. I would like to transition to the sheriff's department, make my voice heard before.
I'm in favor of negotiating with the sheriff's department and doing our best. No contract is permanent. It will have an expiration date, will need to be renegotiated, it will need to be renewed. I don't know what those time periods would be, what they're like with Lions or Superior, but I know they will have a contract period. Nothing is permanent. The sun is going to burn out. So that, even if it's a year, if it's 2 years, if it's 3 years, that gives us ample time as a community to have our police coverage addressed. And we can take that time to ask ourselves, what is it that we value most from our police, and how do we want to keep ourselves a strong community that feels safe and our kids feel safe on the streets? And then how can we best achieve that? And we're not going to do that in 5 minutes.
I agree. I don't think we're making any major decisions today, but my comments are that I think, I agree ultimately with what Eric said about trying to get some real figures from the county sheriff on different arrangements with them, if we were to go with them, and also ask them again straight up, we want to build the NPD, what can we do in the interim? They may just give us the same answer, or they may not. I don't think we're going to get the borough deal that Lions gets, because we are just not geographically situated the same way. We are isolated more. Yes, there's a mountain sheriff, but sheriffs can come at Lions from this direction, or from Longmont, or from Boulder. They can come from Superior to Superior, from Boulder, Louisville, Lafayette. We are much more isolated. It's going to be expensive for us to go with the sheriff as well. So I think I would like to get some real figures from them, and then decide if we want to pursue, and at the same time pursuing the NPD while we're waiting on the figures. Because I think we got to keep all balls in the air to make a better decision. I feel like our hands being forced by the county, and that seems there's not okay.
So are we directing Miranda to look
I
for a
just
permanent
expressed my
marshal as
opinion.
well? To put an ad out now for a permanent marshal and for interim and see what comes up?
Yeah, I think she said that was a possibility. I'd like us to reach out to Boulder County Sheriff's Office and see if they can help us during, this transition period, rebuilding the police department, because it just doesn't seem right for us to be posting for slots that we need filled at 2 times their wage, and then sometimes we get someone to fill in, and sometimes we don't, and then we have to scale at 2 hours, and it just seems like maybe they would be willing to assist us in some way, since it's to their benefit as well. I mean, they have to respond to calls, police calls in this area.
I don't know if you feel like you got clear guidance or not, but I think.
Not really.
Okay, I think we
Probably
need to
clear.
hear from the sheriff what the prices are.
Right, I guess that's not a problem. I think we hear that loud and
No
clear.
matter what.
The question is the recruitment angle. Am I still, does the Board of Trustees want us to post for a marshal and see what happens?
Just go around.
Yeah, let's take a vote on that. While we're finding out the prices while we're getting the costs from the sheriff. Let's take a vote on, shall we continue recruitment efforts for a marshal? Because we're looking good on possible,
You can't vote on a discussion.
No, but you can express your interest.
Okay.
So, no, I would say no if we're looking to get a permanent contract with Boulder County Sheriff's Office, because I think we need to actually decide one way or the other and not do both ways at the same time.
Well, we can't decide until we have the numbers from Boulder County. So that makes it hard to decide right now.
And we're deciding without these figures.
I would personally say, go ahead and look. In the meantime, between now and our next meeting, if the perfect candidate answers in tomorrow, well, then bring it to us. I mean, at this point, we could go either way. At this point, if you tell me with what we have right now, I would say Boulder County Sheriff, but that could change in a day or two. Who knows?
I'd be interested in continuing to pursue an interim marshal because I think either way that would be helpful for us, whether we're transitioning or rebuilding.
True.
I got nothing more to say.
Tom wants to build it. We know what Tom wants.
I'm in favor of focusing on securing immediate police coverage through Boulder County Sheriff's Office. I think that's the shortest, quickest. And
Miranda, do you have?
I think you're split.
Direction.
Once again, we're split.
No. So what, can you
Can I get
just
just a no?
verbalize the options right now?
I just want to mention, either way, Boulder County Sheriff's Office is not going to give immediate coverage. Even if we committed today, they're not going to be able to give us immediate coverage. It's going to take 6 months. So that's why I was saying go for an interim marshal while we sort out the contract with BCSO.
Miranda, just keep doing your best to get us police coverage, any and all means necessary.
Still not clear.
We'll just keep doing the recruitment strategy and keep you updated as it unfolds. And, again, I've been very honest with every applicant, and some are willing to wait and some aren't. And so that's just kind of the nature of where we're at.
That sounds reasonable. It's 10 after. So
I move to adjourn.
What's that?
I move to adjourn.
Oh, okay.
Mayor
Yeah.
Bigland,
No.
Trustee Blakemore? No. Trustee Corvalon?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
I vote we adjourn.
And Trustee Coombs as well?
Yes.
So we're tied again, so that means we adjourn. No.
Motion fails.
So we have to vote to extend.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just talk for a second and we do have to vote to extend. What we're talking about, the one thing we need to talk about next week, if we're not talking about now, is that 7th vote.
Yeah.
Because man, tonight, if it wasn't clear before, it's crystal clear now.
Yeah, it's so
We
clear.
have 2 more trustees and we tied 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. What about allowing Steve to join? He seemed like a great guy and he wants to do it.
Sorry. I move to adjourn.
I'll second and I'll talk about it.
You guys, if we're not going to get the work done, it doesn't mean it's not done. We just have more to do next week and we don't get anything done. So I'm a little irritated. Everyone wants to be done so early, but sure, let's go.
I agree with you, but we're on a vote.
Ridiculous.
But by the procedure that's been put in place.
It's ridiculous.
So there was a motion and a second. Can I take the vote? Trustee Blakemore? Yes. Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Mahoney?
Yes.
Trustee Severs?
Yes.
And Mayor Giblin?
No.
I mean, does Miranda even know what to do? But anyway, I guess she'll just keep doing what she's doing, which is great, but nothing's happening. Good night.
Thanks, Tony.
More direction.